Listen up, anime-only warriors. If that insane season finale left you craving more of our glorious king, you're in the right place. We're picking up exactly where the anime ended and diving straight into full manhwa chaos. Drop a like, subscribe, and brace yourself. This is the next level of solo leveling madness. Let's go. The chapter kicks off deep inside a dungeon, where a man was practically shaking in his boots, staring up at a shadowy figure looming over him like death itself had decided to take a stroll. Panicked, he stammered, asking what the thing was, but the so-called creepy grandpa didn't even bother to look at him. With a dry mutter, he said, "He's not the one. They're hiding cleverly, aren't they?" The shards of brilliant light glimmered faintly, making the tense air feel almost suffocating. Suddenly, creepy grandpa sensed another presence. With a casual swivel, he spotted Yogamont, the monarch of transfiguration, just standing there as if the place were his backyard. Yogamont wasn't there for a friendly chat either. He came with news, something about East Island. Creepy grandpa's lip curled into a scoff. East Island, that was the territory of the Shadow Monarch. He asked Yogamont if he really intended to deal with that disaster of a place. Yogamont explained that the rulers had decided to push their legions southward from the island, and he intended to claim it for himself. Creepy grandpa raised an eyebrow, equal parts amused and skeptical. Then, curiosity piqued, he asked about the Shadow Monarch. Yogamont smirked, cryptically stating that if the planner fulfills the contract, it'll be fine. Before dropping a bombshell, the greatest fragment of brilliant light had been confirmed to reside there. That was all creepy grandpa needed. His eyes gleamed like a kid spotting candy. "You came all this way just to tell me that?" he said, voice dripping with intrigue. But before they could start scheming any further, creepy grandpa stiffened. Something was off. "We've been lured here," he muttered, suspicion coating every word. At that moment, another figure appeared, radiating hostility like a heat wave of rage. Creepy grandpa studied him carefully, then sneered. "That guy earlier couldn't possibly wield the fragments of light. So what's this trace doing here?" His eyes sparkled with a mixture of annoyance and amusement. "Ah, I see. You plan to get in our way." The newcomer's fury was practically combustible. "That small island to the east, you mean Korea, don't you?" he roared. Creepy grandpa, ever the arrogant show-off, tilted his head, smirked, and asked, "And what exactly are you going to do about it, Ilwan?" Yogamont, clearly tired of the theatrics, reminded Silad that wasting time on nobodies wasn't exactly productive. But creepy grandpa wasn't done. With a devilish grin, he turned back to Ilwan and taunted, "Try to stop us, if you can." That was all it took. Ilwan lunged with a primal roar. "I won't let you escape." His attack was lightning fast, but creepy grandpa was faster. An ice shield materialized effortlessly, blocking the assault, while he grinned like this was all a chess game, and he was 3 moves ahead. As the freezing air swirled around them, he readied his counterattack, and the dungeon erupted into chaos. Meanwhile, inside the Red Gate, Drippy Woo's shadow army was in full farming mode, mowing down monsters like they were low-level XP grunts. The dungeon boss, clearly overestimating himself, glared at Jinwoo with disdain, thinking Jinwoo was just another insect to squash. Jinwoo, of course, had other plans. He smirked, signaled his shadows, and suddenly the forest became a nightmare scene straight out of a horror film. Spewing shadow soldiers left and right, heads of minions in hand, his army made an entrance so menacing that the boss immediately realized he'd messed up. Desperate, the boss tried calling for backup, but it was too late. A corpse launched straight at his face like some disrespectful delivery service, courtesy of Jinwoo's shadows. Jinwoo, standing tall like an emperor surveying his peasants, delivered the coldest burn imaginable. "Calling me smallest now?" Panic set in, and the boss screamed at his henchmen to do something, anything, but the shadow army was already cutting through them like butter. Tank bulldozed through foes with reckless efficiency, clearing paths like the unpaid bodyguard Jinwoo always needed. Seeing his forces collapse, the boss finally lost it. He charged at Jinwoo, thinking main character energy was still on his side. 5 seconds later, reality hit hard. Baru and Igris tag-teamed the guy like they were auditioning for WWE, slicing off an arm here, a leg there. Before the boss could even process the chaos, Tusk intervened, manipulating inverse gravity to slam him into the ground as if he owed rent. Pinned and utterly defeated, the boss could only watch as Jinwoo strolled up, exuding an aura of death itself. "Now, you'll answer my questions. It'll hurt less if you do," Jinwoo said calmly. The monster barely had time to regret its life choices before being reduced to nothing. Standing over the lifeless body, Jinwoo let out a sigh, musing that the system still hadn't rewarded him. Interference or not, he shrugged. Answers would come in time. Reaching into his inventory, he pulled out the key from the cursed random box, the key to Cartanon Temple. As he examined it, a countdown appeared, ticking away the moments until he could enter. Flashbacks of that dungeon. The nightmare that had kicked off everything flooded his mind. But this time was different. Gone was the weak, desperate Jinwoo. Standing there now was Drippy Woo, the master of aura farming, ready to claim what was his. And if the system thought it could just call him back without consequences, it was about to get a rude awakening. Jinwoo stared down at the key in his hand, the countdown ticking away like a bomb set to ruin someone's day. He wondered, not for the first time, if all of this had been orchestrated from the very beginning. Was the system just sitting there, twiddling its thumbs, waiting for him to return? Somewhere deep in the dungeon, in the shadows, a sinister presence observed him. It smirked, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The rematch inside Kartenon Temple already brewing. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinho, slouched in his office like some wannabe corporate overlord, handling business with all the authority of someone who just discovered spreadsheets. He scoffs at complaints from those he'd sued, calling them whiny crybabies. Once his justice was dealt with, he leaned back, convinced he'd obliterated every bit of slander against Jinwoo. But his moment of triumph was short-lived. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo materializes behind him, ghost-like and annoyingly quiet. "You sure are working hard, Jinho," Jinwoo says casually. His presence so stealthy it made Jinho wonder if the guy even made noise while breathing. Jinwoo asks if there's been any trouble. Jinho assures him that everything's running smoothly, but then his eyes can't help but wander to Jinwoo's outfit. Before he can even ask, Jinwoo casually tosses a bag full of magical cores onto the desk. "You said we needed money for the guild," he remarks. Jinho's face lights up. "Salaries won't be an issue anymore," he says with a grin, clearly picturing a payroll paradise. Jinwoo, still trying to process this, raises an eyebrow. Jinho quickly reminds him that they still need to hire another guild member, which, yes, means someone actually has to get paid. Nodding with mock seriousness, Jinho suddenly shifts to the real crisis. The guild needs a name. Jinwoo, expecting some earth-shattering dilemma, watches unimpressed as Jinho starts pitching the most ridiculous options imaginable. Sungyu Guild, Wuho Guild, Jinjin Guild. It's like a kindergarten naming contest on steroids. Jinwoo, clearly over it, deadpans. "Solo play guild. No drama, no flair. After all, it's a solo play guild." Jinho stares at him, trying to figure out if this was meant to be a joke or if his brain just short-circuited. Before either of them can argue, a knock at the door breaks the tension. Jinho opens it and freezes. Standing there, all casual and composed, is none other than Cha herself. She asks if this is Jinwoo's guild office, and Jinho, still processing the shock, nods dumbly. When he asks why she's here, she hits them with a bombshell. She wants to join the guild. They sit down, and Jinwoo, still making sure he heard correctly, asks her to clarify. No hesitation. Cha repeats herself like it's the most normal thing in the world. Jinwoo stares at her, utterly lost, wondering what dimension he just stepped into. He probes further. Did the chairman instruct her to join? Or maybe Hunter Choi finally get tired of her antics and kick her out? Cha shakes her head to both questions, leaving Jinwoo in a state of pure, confused awe. Jinwoo leaned in, suddenly serious, and asked, "If that's not the case, then why exactly do you want to join my solo play guild?" Cha blinked, clearly thrown off, not just by the question, but by the absurdity of the guild's name. "You seriously named it that?" she asked, trying not to laugh. Jinwoo, as unbothered as ever, replied casually, "Yeah, what's wrong with it? The vice master and I agreed on it." Jinho, predictably, shot back immediately. "I never agreed to anything. You better reconsider those abominations I suggested." But Jinwoo wasn't paying attention. He was already analyzing Cha, her pulse, her breathing, her carefully controlled expressions. She tried to appear calm, but Jinwoo wasn't buying it. He questioned her contract, noting that it had only been 2 years since her awakening, which technically meant she was still bound to her hunter guild. Cha, without missing a beat, casually said she had enough money to pay the penalty. Jinwoo's confusion spiked. Why would someone be so desperate that they were willing to pay a fine just to join his fledgling guild? He reminded her that the guild wasn't exactly swimming in cash, so they couldn't offer her anything close to her actual worth. Cha just shrugged. "I don't need a down payment," she said, as if that solved everything. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. "Then why join us? There's nothing here for you." Cha hesitated, mind racing, trying to explain without sounding insane. At first it had been simple curiosity. His mana, it didn't smell like the others. But during the Jeju Island raid, reality hit hard. She thought she was going to die. And then Drippy Woo saved her. The scene flashes back to the aftermath of the raid. Cha wakes groggily in a helicopter, asking the chairman where they were. "We've just landed at the Hunters Association. You'll be sent to the hospital soon," he replied. But she had only one concern. Jinwoo, was he the one who saved us? The chairman confirmed it. She blinked, processing the truth. It wasn't a dream. Surviving that time had been a miracle, but what about next time? What if a situation arose where she couldn't escape death? Back in the present, her thoughts tumbled out awkwardly, face slowly reddening. She wanted to stay by his side, till the very end, but couldn't figure out how to say it without sounding foolish. Jinwoo, watching her closely, was more confused than ever. Why was she acting so weird? Growing impatient, he finally asked, "Are you going to answer me, or are we going to play charades all day?" Snapping out of her thoughts, Cha blurted, I just want to live comfortably. Is there a problem with that? Jinwoo, considering she was only 22, realized that being an S-rank hunter must be exhausting. Her words didn't fully convince him, but he could tell there was more beneath the surface. Mr. Aura Farmer, aka Jinwoo, watched her closely. He understood why hunters had been beaten down during the Jeju Island raid. A change of pace made sense, but wanting in didn't mean she was getting a free pass. Jinwoo laid down the rules. If she wanted to join, she had to pass the entrance test. Cha raised an eyebrow. That wasn't in the recruiting notice. Jinwoo, shrugging innocently, said, "Maybe the vice master made a mistake. It's a new rule." She pressed him about the test, and Jinwoo smirked. "You have to beat one of my summons." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I'm that weak?" Drippy Woo, unfazed, added, "For you, I'll use my strongest summon." That wiped the smugness right off her face. Standing, she asked, "When's the test?" Jinwoo, never one to waste time, replied simply, "Right now." He suggested using the association's gymnasium, and silently thought it was the perfect chance to test shadow exchange with two people. Stepping close, his voice low, he wrapped his arms around her. "You don't have to leave. I'll use a shortcut," he said smoothly. Without even realizing it, he was effortlessly rizzing. Cha barely had time to process before he added, "We just have to stick together for a bit." And just like that, darkness enveloped them. Meanwhile, Jinho returned to the room, arms loaded with snacks, only to be greeted by a massive high orc staring him down. They locked eyes in pure confusion. The orc, totally unfazed, casually snatched a snack from Jinho's hands and devoured it in a single bite. Back in the gymnasium, Cha spun around, shocked. How had Jinwoo done that? Internally, Drippy Woo was celebrating a small victory. His experiment had proven that shadow exchange worked like a gateway, letting him transport others with him. Shifting focus, he told Cha, "Game time." Cha frowned, clearly annoyed. "I don't have a weapon," she said. Jinwoo's eyes glimmered with mischief. "Are you talking about the pickaxe?" he asked. She looked at him, cheeks tinged with embarrassment. "No, that's not my weapon," she muttered. Sighing in exasperation, Cha headed to the storage room. She scanned the collection. Nothing fancy, but good enough to get the job done. Selecting a sword, she returned to the gym, ready for the test. Jinwoo, ever observant, raised an eyebrow at the blade. "Are you sure about this? That's not your usual weapon," he noted. Cha didn't even hesitate. "Doesn't matter. Monsters never fight on our terms anyway," she replied. Jinwoo couldn't help but respect her pragmatism, but he knew an ordinary summon wouldn't be enough. She deserved a real challenge. Raising his hand, he summoned Igris. "Among my soldiers, he's the best swordsman," Jinwoo said. The room darkened as Igris stepped forward, and Cha sized him up. "What are the rules? How do I win or lose?" she asked. Jinwoo explained simply, "Destroy the summon to win, surrender to lose." Although he had promised to use his strongest summon, throwing Baru at her would have been overkill, bordering on cruelty. Once both were ready, Jinwoo signaled the start. Cha began gathering mana, and something clicked in his mind. "Weapons don't matter, huh?" That line echoed in his head. He stopped them. Reaching into his inventory, he pulled out the Demon King's longsword, a weapon capable of turning most hunters to dust with a single swing. He tossed it to Igris, who activated its ability instantly, sending a massive wave of electricity hurtling toward Cha. She dodged effortlessly. Jinwoo's lips curved into a small grin. Fast. She was fast. That attack would have obliterated any ordinary hunter. The clash escalated rapidly, blades ringing through the gym like an overzealous action movie. Somewhere in the office, Chairman Go Gun-Hee frowned. No one was supposed to be in the gym today. He called up the CCTV feed, only to see Mr. Aura Farmer and Cha going full-on demolition mode. A memory flashed through his mind. Cha's face when she realized Jinwoo had saved her. He chuckled at his own blindness, then ordered the cameras shut off and the logs altered. Let chaos reign. Back in the gym, Jinwoo's eyes widened. Cha had just beaten Igris and was standing there victorious. Dusting herself off, she looked at Jinwoo expectantly. "Is this really your strongest shadow?" she asked, knowing he was holding back. Jinwoo's expression darkened as shadows began swirling behind him. A chilling presence filled the room. Baru, the Demon Lord-level bug, emerged. He met her gaze and asked again, "Are you sure about this?" Fresh off her victory against Igris, Cha smirked. "You said strongest? Summon him." Jinwoo, ever the menace, warned, "You might get hurt." Cha didn't flinch. The air grew heavy, lights dimmed, and a dark aura curled around Jinwoo as Baru manifested fully. "Are you certain?" Jinwoo asked one last time. Most shadow soldiers were diet versions of their original selves, but Baru had been brewed in the depths of hell specifically to exterminate hunters. If Jinwoo went all out, Cha's chances weren't just slim. They were non-existent, but the glorious king had his orders. Defeat Cha without killing her. Baru, being dramatically extra, put on his puppy face, then flexed his claws, ready to obliterate everything. He let out a screech that shattered lights and windows alike. Cha stood, processing how Jinwoo could even control this beast. Baru fully transformed, intimidation stats maxed out, but Jinwoo immediately nerfed him, like a dev working overtime. "Claws away," Jinwoo commanded. Life was going to get very hard if he scratched her during the test. Baru, scared straight, retracted his claws instantly. Seeing the opening, Cha lunged, but before she could even blink, Baru had teleported behind her. She swung her sword again, thinking she could outmaneuver him, but Baru caught it like it was a toy and casually tossed it aside. Then, with pure dramatic flair, he turned to Jinwoo. "Give me the word," Baru said, "and I'll humble her," without even touching her. And oh, he meant it. Cha kept swinging, relentless, but Baru barely moved. He dodged each strike as if Ultra Instinct had been permanently activated, effortless, infuriating, and terrifying all at once. Then, out of nowhere, he invaded her personal space and let out a banshee-like scream that sent her flying across the gym. Jinwoo, watching from the sidelines like a glorious king monitoring his experiment, realized the bug was spiraling out of control. He considered intervening, but Cha wasn't about to take that L. She scrambled to her feet, determination blazing, and Jinwoo could only wonder what exactly is going on in that head of hers. Baru, meanwhile, didn't question a thing. Predator mode activated, he lunged at her, spitting some pseudo-philosophical nonsense about prey and predators. Cha barely dodged, gathering every scrap of mana she had left, and launched an attack. It struck, but Baru's exoskeleton was built different. Her sword shattered like cheap plastic, exactly as she intended. It was bait. Using her skill, Sword of Light, she finally pierced through his armor. Victory should have followed, but instead it triggered Baru's old Queen-issued programming. Loyalty to Jinwoo? Ignored. The bug muttered, "This woman is my enemy," and suddenly things got very, very serious. His aura flared and he went in for the kill. Jinwoo ordered him to stop, but Baru wasn't listening. Cha closed her eyes, bracing for death. Then, an explosion. Opening her eyes, she saw Jinwoo standing there, having intercepted the attack like it was just another Tuesday. Baru, snapping out of it, immediately dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Jinwoo didn't even flinch. He was too busy staring at Cha. "Why are you trying this hard?" he thought. This wasn't life or death. It was a test for a nameless guild. Then, for reasons even Jinwoo couldn't fully explain, he asked the question, "Are you into me?" Chadex froze. Jinwoo, still skeptical, thought, "There's no way the Queen of S-Ranks is interested in someone like me." But before he could overthink it, she quietly, softly muttered, "I think that might be the case." Meanwhile, across the globe in America, Michael Connor and Mrs. Sellner met with David, director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. David, looking like he'd just realized he'd forgotten his own birthday, asked why they failed to recruit Jinwoo. Michael, still reeling, explained that according to Mrs. Sellner's observations, Jinwoo, the glorious king, was one of the top dogs. David raised an eyebrow. "You mean national-level hunter status?" Mrs. Sellner sighed, beginning her explanation. "Normally, awakened hunters borrow power from a place called the other side," she said, "and I can sense that connection. Some shine like beacons, radiating power so intense I call them kings. But Jinwoo, he has no connection. When I looked into his eyes, the abyss stared back. He isn't connected to darkness. He is the darkness." David, gulping nervously, asked hesitantly, "So, is he evil?" Mrs. Sellner shook her head. "No, just different. Every other hunter borrows power. Jinwoo is power. He's not bound by external limitations. There's literally no cap to his growth." Michael, sweating bullets, muttered, "So, no cap? At all?" Mrs. Sellner nodded. David inhaled deeply, thanked her, and told Michael to follow him. It was time for Plan B. They descended to level 24, a basement straight out of a classified government horror movie. David briefed Michael on a new approach, asking if he remembered the first-ever S-rank gate. Michael nodded grimly. That disaster wiped out the entire West Coast. David recounted how America had recruited the strongest hunters in the world for that raid, promising unimaginable riches. Only 5 survived, rewarded with authority equal to a nation. Hence, the birth of national-level hunters. Then came Kamish, the inextinguishable flame, a dragon that turned top-rank hunters into charcoal. Hundreds perished, but one relic survived. As the elevator doors opened, Michael's eyes widened. There it was, a runestone carved from Kamish's corpse, preserved like a legendary artifact. David smirked. 8 years had passed, yet no mage-class national-level hunter had emerged. But Kamish was about to give this great nation one last gift. Meanwhile, back in Korea, Jinwoo stood in the shower, staring at his reflection, like he'd just unlocked a new DLC skin. And he couldn't believe it. A girl had actually confessed to him. Him, the guy who spent years getting treated like dungeon fodder, and not just any girl, someone like Cha, suddenly found himself analyzing his own glow-up. Height shot up, muscles chiseled, skin cleared up like he'd unlocked some K-beauty speedrun achievement. Maybe it was all those survival buffs from Will to Survive, he wondered. Lost in thought, inspiration struck. Jinwoo marched straight into Jinha's room, blasting "How would you rape me?" through the speakers. Without looking up, Jinha asked, "In what?" Jinwoo, dead serious, replied, "My attractiveness." That finally got her to look, and she burst out laughing. She teased him, asking where this sudden confidence came from, saying that in her eyes, he'd still look like a bum. Ouch. Jinwoo's ego took a solid hit. Not missing a beat, he dropped a bombshell. He was planning to start his own guild. Eyebrows raised, Jinha asked if he was going to be the big boss now, already texting her friend about about this breaking news. Jinwoo, stone-faced, asked her opinion on the name Solo Play Guild. Jinha's look was pure disappointment. "What were you thinking, dumbass?" she asked. Jinwoo, for once, considered her point. He asked for suggestions, and she offered Asian Guild, explaining that A meant I and Jin meant to move forward. Jinwoo mulled it over, secretly liking the sound. Meanwhile, across town, Cha was spiraling. She flopped on her bed like a panicked fish, replaying the day's events. She just confessed, basically, to Jinwoo. What if he thought she was insane? But then she reasoned, he did save my life. Naturally, I'd be interested. Yeah, she was doomed. In the middle of her spiral, a memory clicked. While unconscious, she'd seen a hand reaching out, a voice urging her to tell Jinwoo something. She remembered. It was Byung-yu. He was telling me to warn Jinwoo about the power inside him. The next day at the Knights Guild HQ, Park Jing-soo and Yong Yun-tae discussed a gate that had appeared in their territory. The problem? Getting a raid permit wasn't going to be easy. It was basically an S-rank gate. Jing-soo groaned, knowing that if they messed this up, a top-tier guild would swoop in and steal the glory. Just as he was about to rage over the idea of feeding another guild, a woman casually suggested forming an alliance. Jing-soo dismissed it at first, doubting that any guild would team up with them when it was obvious they couldn't handle the gate alone. Then it hit him. Jinwoo. Yong Yaram smirked, knowing teaming up with him could be a PR goldmine, but calling him like a desperate ex wasn't an option. They'd show up in person. Meanwhile, Jinwoo and Jinha finalized the guild name. Jinwoo suggested Jin, and Jinha nodded enthusiastically, internally relieved that it was infinitely better than Solo Play Guild. With the name settled, Jinwoo said they needed one more member. Jinha immediately piped up. "What about Cha?" Jinwoo shook his head. "Not the one." Jinha's jaw dropped. Cha, an S-rank, a dungeon raid legend, insanely beautiful, and he rejected her? Out loud, she asked, "Who exactly are you looking for?" Jinwoo shrugged. "Someone with a hunter's license, not too invested in guild politics, and most importantly, someone I can trust." Jinha blinked, realizing she actually knew a few people who fit that description. Before they could continue, a knock came at the door. Jinwoo braced himself, silently praying it wasn't Cha again. He opened it. Not Cha, Park Jing-soo, Yong Yaram, and Yong Yun-tae stood there. Park Jing-soo introduced himself as Guildmaster of the Knights Guild. Jinwoo and Jinha exchanged glances. Why the hell did they come all the way here? After introductions, Park Jing-soo got down to business, showing Jinwoo a video of a massive gate recently appearing in Korea, radiating an absurd amount of magical energy. Jinwoo, ever the straight shooter, asked, "S-rank gate?" Park Jing-soo shook his head. "No, it's not an S-rank. But it's dangerously close," he said, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. "This is the largest A-rank gate Busan has ever seen." Jinwoo, ever the opportunist, briefly entertained a thought. Maybe I should swing by Mommy Juhi's place like old times. She could treat me to sashimi. Meanwhile, Park Jing-soo continued, explaining that the Hunters Association wouldn't grant their guild a raid permit without an S-rank hunter. That's where Jinwoo came in. He wanted Jinwoo on the raid to secure the gate. Behind him, Yong Yarim was busy fangirling, debating whether to ask for an autograph or a selfie. Park Jing-soo laid out the terms. An S-rank hunter normally receives 10% of the loot, but he was willing to offer 20% to Jinwoo. Jinwoo didn't even flinch. 50-50, he countered, adding that the deal had to include his guild, not just him personally. He casually dropped the bomb. He'd just founded the Ajin Guild. Realizing he wasn't dealing with a pushover, Park Jing-soo tried negotiating. How about 40-60 instead? Jinwoo shot him down instantly, reminding him that he wasn't the one in need here. Sweating bullets, Park Jing-soo finally relented, but only on one condition. Jinwoo handles the boss fight. Deal settled, Park Jing-soo stressed that the raid had to start by tomorrow and asked Jinwoo to join them immediately. Jinwoo, naturally, had other plans. "I've got something to take care of. I'll see you in Busan tomorrow," he replied. Park Jing-soo, realizing he had zero leverage, could only nod. Meanwhile, Jinwoo got a call from his mom. Confused, he asked if she'd gotten a new phone or misdialed, but she simply told him to come home for dinner. Jinwoo, world-ending monsters? No problem. Mom's dinner invitation? Never say no. Fast forward. The next day, the Knights Guild was stationed near the Busan Gate, surrounded by a massive crowd. Hunters hustled with last-minute preparations, while Park Jing-soo, clad in full armor, glared at his phone. "We should have brought Drippy Woo yesterday," he muttered, checking the time repeatedly. 5 minutes to departure. Meanwhile, Jinwoo leisurely prepared at home, glancing outside to check if Gina had brought an umbrella. Cut to Gina's school. A group of students wandered the hallways, grumbling about their art teacher dumping all the work on them. They stumbled into a dusty, abandoned classroom, where one student noticed something in the corner, a gate. True to horror movie logic, he walked right up to it. "Is anyone else scared?" he asked nervously. The gate was sealed, closed for at least a week. Only hunters could pass through. One student muttered about how neglected the place had been, but no one noticed the cracks forming along the seal. Then, without warning, a hand shot out from the gate, grabbing the nearest student by the head. He thrashed violently, but it was too late. His friends watched in horror as the creature crushed his skull like a soda can. Monsters began crawling out of the gate, buzzing with bloodlust, but these two were just scouts. One sniffed the air, locking onto the humans inside the building. "This place is built like a damn fortress," he muttered to his companion. Then, turning to the other scout, he said, "Call the others. I'll start the early feast." With that, he stepped out, eyes already fixed on the unlucky students. Before they could react, doom had arrived. Jinwoo arrived at the scene, casually taking in the colossal gate. His eyes scanned over the assembled squad. A mix of miners, collectors, 13 A ranks, and 20 B ranks. A part of him raised an eyebrow at the number of A ranks, but in classic Jinwoo fashion, he just shrugged. Expected, they're one of the top 5 guilds after all. No sooner had he taken a breath than hunters swarmed him, bombarding him with questions like he was some kind of celebrity. "Are you leading the raid? Do we follow you? Are you real?" Jinwoo blinked, utterly confused. He hadn't signed up for a press conference. Enter young Yurim, stepping in like a teacher breaking up an overexcited classroom. "I'm A-rank healer Yurim from the Knights Guild," she said politely, giving him a nod, while the other hunters continued staring like he was a rare Pokemon. Then Park Yong-soo announced that he'd be leading the raid. The guild members whispered among themselves, side-eyeing each other, wondering why Jinwoo, the S-rank powerhouse, wasn't taking charge. Yong-soo shut them down, assigning Jinwoo to the back as a safety net. Every A-rank in the room felt personally insulted. One scoffed, "We don't need a babysitter. We're plenty strong." Yong-soo, realizing he might have just poked the pride bear, tried to smooth things over. Jinwoo just shrugged, silently noting how confident these hunters were. With that settled, the group moved into the dungeon, cut to the Hunter Association's emergency call center. A phone operator picked up a trembling distress call. A girl's shaky voice reported the situation, barely holding it together. "Where are you?" the operator asked urgently. Hiding in a bathroom, the girl whispered that she and her friend were trapped, but her friend had been killed. The operator tried to calm her, promising hunters were on the way. "Describe the monsters," the operator pressed. The girl hesitated. "They're green. I saw them on TV before." Her words made the operator's blood run cold. Green skin, orcs. Things had just gone from bad to straight up hell. The operator ordered the girl to run, but it was too late. A guttural scream ripped through the line as an orc grabbed her. The line went dead, leaving the operator frozen in horror. Back at the school, chaos reigned. Surviving students scrambled for exits while orcs methodically hunted down the trapped ones. One grumbled about half of the prey escaping, but there were still plenty to terrorize. The orcs, feeling cocky, blocked all exits to make the massacre extra painful. Students attempted a last-ditch barricade, stacking tables and chairs like it would stop literal monsters. An orc kicked down the door as if collecting overdue rent, stepping in drenched in blood, ready to make it rain. One desperate student made a run for the window, thinking he could anime protagonist his way out. 2 glowing red eyes locked onto him. Before he could react, an axe smacked his skull. Game over in a single brutal second. More orcs poured in, surrounding the remaining students like wolves in a pen. One sniffed the air, locking onto Song-yi. "Target her first," he said. Gina and Han Song-yi were cornered. Gina called desperately for her brother. Han Song-yi braced herself, thinking, "Even if I'm E-rank, I'm still awakened." She was stepping up to fight. The orc eyed Han Song-yi, mildly disappointed. His partner shook his head. No, something stronger was nearby. Their gaze fell on Gina. The smell's coming from her. She must die. The orc swung his axe, but impact never came. Gina opened her eyes to see a massive high orc blocking the blow. Like it was nothing. Her brain short-circuited before realization hit. Her brother had arrived, stationing soldiers to protect her. With a single punch, the high orc sent the attacker flying through the ceiling. Every living being in the room, monsters included, gawked in shock. 3 more snarling orcs turned their attention to Gina. The real fight was about to begin. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Park Yong-soo barely had time to yell, "It's an ogre," before the squad confronted a towering 2-headed monstrosity. Upper body maxed, lower body apparently skipped leg day. The beast swung its weapon like swatting flies, but Yong-soo threw up a barrier just in time. The ogre slammed into it with full force. The shield held. Yuntai, riding a sudden surge of main character energy, sprinted up the monster's axe like a parkour course, blinded one head, and shouted, "Go nuts, everyone!" Blades and spells flew, and the 2-headed ogre was quickly reduced to a well-done steak. Once the dust settled, Yong-soo called for a regroup, visibly stressed. Starting the raid with a 2-headed ogre? Not ideal. He turned to Jinwoo like a teacher quizzing a student. "Do you know their other name?" Unfazed, Jinwoo replied, "Gravekeepers." Yong-soo's face fell. That meant an undead army wasn't far behind. Before he could finish, the undead squad rolled up, but strangely they didn't attack. They just stood there like NPCs, whose programming glitched. Hunter stepped back, whispering in disbelief. Jinwoo sighed, disappointment heavy in his chest. A dungeon of this size should have been brimming with challenge, but so far it was a letdown. Something felt off, and it didn't take him long to realize exactly what it was. He turned to Yong-soo, expression calm. "Something urgent came up. I have to go." Yong-soo's face went pale. "Bro, you can't just leave us here. We might die without you." Jinwoo smirked, completely unbothered. "Relax. I'm leaving someone just as reliable." Before anyone could even ask what he meant, a familiar, terrifying presence materialized. Beirut, the Jeju Island raid MVP himself. The hunters froze, recognition dawning immediately. Jinwoo's tone was casual. No introductions necessary. He's in charge now. He'll protect you. Beirut, thrilled to stretch his claws, let out a deafening roar that echoed through the dungeon before launching into a massacre. Shadows rippled behind Jinwoo as he summoned more of his soldiers. Turning to the huntress, he said, "These guys will help you. 20 should be enough for this dungeon." Then, without hesitation, he began to leave. Panic erupted among the hunters. "Wait, you're really leaving after letting all these shadows loose?" Yongsoo yelled. Jinwoo's eyes darkened, a death glare piercing through the group. "I can dismiss them if you want," he said, voice dripping with annoyance. Checking his shadow exchange cooldown, 1 hour and 42 minutes remaining. He sprinted toward the exit. Yongsoo and the others could only stare in disbelief as he disappeared. As he ran, Jinwoo's instincts flared. Signals from his soldiers near Gina screamed danger. His gut twisted with unease. Suddenly a wall of undead blocked his path. That was the last straw. He roared, ordering them aside, and to his shock they obeyed. They knelt like subjects before their king. Jinwoo blinked, wondering if he had some hidden passive. Am I a high-class necromancer? A ruler passive? There was no time to theorize. Ignoring the kneeling zombies, he leaped over them and called, "Kaizel!" The wyvern appeared instantly. The dungeon seemed to buzz with recognition at Jinwoo's signature ride. He commanded full speed and, just to be extra, buffed Kaizel's stats by 50%. Faster flight, stronger endurance. Inside, shadow orcs were already mopping up the remaining monsters like highly trained janitors. The students witnessing this looked at the orcs as if they were NPCs that had glitched out of villain mode. Gina, powered purely by little sister energy, sprinted toward one of the orcs, calling for Jinwoo. The orc responded with the silent protagonist treatment. It simply pointed her toward the exit. Elsewhere, in a hallway, a different orc sat on a makeshift throne, monologuing dramatically about how the final restrictions had been lifted and that nothing could stop him now. He was mid-hype when a minion brought bad news. High orc warriors were aiding the humans outside. The chief's smug confidence faltered. Fuming, he grabbed his weapon, declaring he would lead the charge like a warlord rewriting history. Meanwhile, deeper in the dungeon, hunters were panicking as insect monsters swarmed. Park Jong-soo tried to maintain composure. Public perception mattered. Retreat was not an option. Suddenly, Baru teleported directly in front of him so quickly it was impossible to track. Without a word, Baru tossed the severed head of a death knight toward Jong-soo. Jong-soo's eyes widened. Shock, horror, disbelief. Baru hadn't just defeated the monster. He had annihilated it in the blink of an eye. Back at the school, shadow-high orcs tried to hold the line against the chief, who was built completely differently. He flexed, boasting that his tattoos were proof of victories over weaker opponents, his form of intimidation. Then he attacked, slicing through one high orc with ease. For a brief moment he smirked, thinking he was unstoppable. But the shadow soldiers regenerated instantly, undoing his perfect strike. The chief froze, confusion and rage crossing his face. His existential crisis had begun. For the first time, he realized he wasn't the apex predator he thought he was. The battle that was supposed to be his moment of glory was slipping from his grasp. No matter how much the orc chief cut down his enemies, they kept rising. The whispers in his head, the voices telling him to slaughter humans, grew louder and more insistent. Something was off. If these monsters were moving because of magic, then all he had to do was find the source and end it. His eyes landed on Gina, hiding behind the high orcs. There, the orc chief zeroed in, swarming the shadows with his minions just long enough to snatch her up, claws like steel trapping her in a nightmare. He could sense the magic power radiating from her, certain he'd found the source. But just as he raised his weapon to strike, something outside the window caught his attention, his expression twisted in pure disbelief. The real nightmare had arrived. The aura alone slammed into him like a debt collector, kicking down his door. He trembled, unable to speak beyond a stammered warning to his minions. Something terrifying was coming. The orcs barely had time to react before Jinwoo and Kaizel crashed through the building, the impact sending the chief flying like a ragdoll. The sheer presence of Jinwoo turned the air suffocating, heavier than any attack the orc had faced. Without a word, Jinwoo walked to Gina. Just a gentle pat on her head, but it radiated absolute calm and control. The classic anime protagonist, everything is fine now move. Drippy Woo's aura alone could have crushed them all. It was suffocating, a silent command that could not be ignored. The orc chief, once all talk and swagger, was now drenched in sweat, his mind racing through 1,000 ways he could die. Summoning whatever courage he had left, he tried to stand tall and speak, to reassert some dignity. Jinwoo's glare cut him off instantly. "Shut up, wait." Jinwoo turned to his little sister, who was trembling, still trying to process the nightmare. He pulled her into a tight hug, whispering apologies for being late, grounding her. Then he turned to the other students, checking if they were okay. Next, Jinwoo's eyes found Song Yi, her expression frozen in sheer terror. Seeing the red mark on Gina's face, his aura shifted from protective to murderous. Without hesitation, he summoned the real aura farmer, Igris, ordering him to shield Gina. Then to the rest of his soldiers, he commanded, Take the students to safety. One foolish orc dared to move. Jinwoo's voice cut through the room like a death sentence. The orc froze, overwhelmed by the raw power emanating from him. The shadow soldiers began escorting the students down the hallway Jinwoo had just cleared, using Kaizel as a makeshift lift. The chief stepped up, trying to salvage some bravado. So those immortal high orcs are your soldiers? Who are you, and why do you speak our language? Jinwoo didn't answer. His glare alone spoke volumes. The orc realized in that instant that this was a one-sided execution. Desperation took over. The chief ordered his minions to attack. One swung an axe, only for Jinwoo to catch the hand and crush it like a soda can, slamming the orc to the floor before stomping its head into paste. The other orcs tried to swarm him, but Jinwoo used Dominator's touch, suspending them midair. With a casual squeeze, they popped like overripe tomatoes, and then the massacre began. Jinwoo moved with lethal efficiency, deleting orc after orc from existence. Only one remained, trembling and terrified. Jinwoo approached, Dominator's touch ready, pinning it to the wall by its mouth. He surveyed the hallway littered with fallen monsters. Then he asked, voice low and dangerous, "Why are your kind so hell-bent on killing humans?" The orc whimpered, muttering about voices in its head, whispers compelling them to slaughter. Jinwoo's eyes glowed darker. Leaning closer, he asked, "Do those voices tell you to kill me too?" The orc couldn't answer. Instead, the last orc stammered, shaking violently, begging for mercy. Jinwoo's grip tightened around its throat. Jinwoo's voice, calm yet deadly, cut through the tension. "That's what I thought. I'm not even human to you, huh? Don't worry, I forgive you." He let that sink in before adding, with an ominous calm, "Just don't expect it to be painless." The dagger in his hand shimmered with deadly intent. Meanwhile, deeper in the dungeon, the healer girl was having a frustrating argument with one of Jinwoo's summoned shadow ants. The ant was gnawing on the corpse of a rare monster, a valuable target she had been trying to collect. She yanked at it like a parent snatching candy from a child. "That's expensive. Don't you know how much vampires sell for?" The ant didn't care. Annoyed by her interference, it scratched her shoulder. She stumbled to the ground, frustrated and helpless, just in time for Baru to descend with a commanding screech. The shadow ant immediately backed off, and Baru casually healed her injuries with precision that made her gape. How does a summoned creature have better healing magic than me? She wondered, stunned. Before she could recover, the party entered the boss room, where a floating, horrifying archlich awaited, surrounded by 10 death knights. The sheer presence of the undead sent chills down the hunters' spines. Park Jong-soo visibly paled, remembering the guild that had been wiped out by a monster of this caliber. As if on cue, more undead began pouring in from the back entrance. Quick on his feet, Jong-soo turned to the healer. "Seal the entrance," he barked. Without hesitation, she conjured a radiant holy shield, blocking the way. Yurim gripped the barrier tightly. "I can only hold this for 5 minutes," she warned. Before the hunters could strategize, Baru strutted in, exuding confidence, like he owned the place. The archlich's aura faltered instantly. Why are you here?" it demanded, panic lacing its voice. Baru, flexing like a third grader showing off his new toy, shrugged. "Simple. We were picked by Jinwoo." "You? You weren't." The archlich flailed in denial, pleading for a meeting with Jinwoo, insisting there must be some misunderstanding. Baru laughed, unimpressed. "You talk way too much for someone about to go 6 feet under." He lunged forward, pinned the monster to the ground, and ripped the glowing essence from its chest. The lich barely managed to scream before Baru crushed it like an insect. In an instant, all the undead collapsed, vanishing into nothingness, leaving the hunters staring in stunned silence. Park Jong-soo could hardly comprehend what had happened. "I knew Baru was strong, but holy hell, that was insane." Yongtai, eyes wide, muttered, "With summons like these, Jinwoo wouldn't even need to enter the dungeon. He could just command them from outside." Jong-soo's thoughts mirrored his words. Even with only half of Jinwoo's army deployed, an entire major guild could be crushed without effort. The idea struck him. Securing Jinwoo's guild would be the fastest path to power. "Don't be ridiculous," Jong-soo said to Yongtai, giving him a wry look. "Even if Jinwoo is all-powerful, he still has to follow the rules. Sure, he could clear a dungeon alone, but the Hunters Association requires a minimum number of hunters to officially enter." Yongtai nodded slowly, the gears in his mind turning. An alliance, not subjugation. That was the only realistic way forward. With a new guild founded by the world's top hunter and the Knights Guild, one of the 5 major guilds joining forces, the name of such an alliance would carry weight that no one could ignore. Back at the school, the aftermath was chaos incarnate. The Hunter Association was on site, trying to manage the cleanup and rescue operations, but the scene looked like a war zone. Parents clashed with authorities, desperate to get inside and find their children, but hunters blocked them firmly. One of the overseeing hunters was speaking quietly with a colleague when he gestured, confirming that no students remained inside. Meanwhile, Drippy Woo sat in a sleek black car with Chairman Go Gun-Hee. The old man's face was grim as he briefed him. Out of 213 students who managed to escape quickly, only 10 others were rescued. The rest were gone. He didn't pause there. Pulling out a phone, he showed Jinwoo a graph displaying the sharp rise of gates worldwide over the past 6 months. Every nation was experiencing sudden spikes in gate appearances, which meant more monsters and more hunters. My glorious king raised an eyebrow, waiting for the real reason behind the meeting. Go Gun-Hee handed him a thick dossier, emphasizing the political and logistical pressure building around him. Requests to meet Drippy Woo had come from Japan, the US, China, Russia, France, the UK, Germany, and even Middle Eastern countries. Some had tried backdoor channels to reach him directly. The chairman stressed that while the association could protect Drippy Woo's personal information, they couldn't prevent foreign powers from making a move. He urged him to remain in Korea, warning that without Jinwoo, the country wouldn't be able to handle the chaos ahead. As they approached the hospital, Chairman Go added that Gina had been taken there. Drippy Woo was about to head inside when the chairman repeated his plea. Stay in Korea. We've already lost 3 of our 10 S-rank hunters, he said, emphasizing the dire stakes. We cannot afford to lose you too. He promised to provide anything Drippy Woo needed. Jinwoo didn't even blink. He dropped his own condition. If you want me to stay, let me raid high-ranked gates solo. The chairman nearly choked. One man, taking on an entire raid alone. He admitted it would be difficult to arrange, but not impossible. Meanwhile, Jinho was busy playing recruiter. On a call with his cousin Yoo Soo-yoon, he tried to convince her to join the newly formed Ajin Guild instead of becoming an ambassador for his father's guild. Skepticism radiated from her instantly. You're asking me to join a guild that doesn't even exist? Are you being scammed? The moment Jinho mentioned my glorious king was leading it, her aura shifted instantly. She appeared at the guild headquarters in record time. Jinho proudly introduced her. This is my cousin, Yoo Soo-yoon, a rank hunter. She lit up at the sight of Drippy Woo. Jinho sighed, muttering, You're the real celebrity here. Jinwoo side-eyed her, skeptical. Is she really a rank? He wondered. He warned her that joining could stir up drama. Soo-yoon didn't hesitate. Anything is better than dealing with Yoo Jin-sung. Jinho rolled his eyes. Who? My older brother. You know, the one with the trash personality. After a bit of conversation, Soo-yoon hit him with the real request. Can I take a selfie with you to flex online? Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association building, Senator Nam Jung-wook was throwing a full-blown tantrum over the chairman allowing Drippy Woo to raid alone. This is blatant favoritism, he bellowed. Chairman Go Gun-Hee didn't even flinch. Yeah, it is, he said calmly. Now, sit down and let me explain. He laid out the reality. If you had to send 20 A-rank hunters or my glorious king into a dungeon, which would you pick? He reminded them that guilds worldwide were vying for Drippy Woo's favor. If Korea mishandled him, he could leave, just like Hunter Hwang Dong-soo did. When another S-rank gate appears, who do you think will save your lives? He asked pointedly. Meanwhile, Cha stared at her phone, gripping it so hard her knuckles whitened. Her eyes locked on a picture of Jinwoo with Yoo Soo-yoon, and she let out a frustrated scream, the kind that could shatter glass. Fast forward. Drippy Woo and Jinho finally arrived at the first raid gate. Jinho craned his neck, looking up like he'd just stumbled upon the gates of heaven itself, completely overwhelmed by the scale and intensity of what lay ahead. This gate was massive. Jinwoo barely had time to roll his eyes before a swarm of reporters descended, hounding him with questions. The nosiest ones even pried into his relationship with Yoo Soo-yoon. My glorious king side-eyed Chief Woo Jin-chul and muttered, I thought my personal info was private. Chief Woo hit him with the reality check. We can hide your details, but we can't stop people from tracking where gates pop up. Oh, and maybe be careful what you post online. Jinwoo remembered that selfie on Instagram and sighed. Before entering the gate, Jinho tried to bring up hiring a mining team, clearly thinking he wasn't built for physical labor. Drippy Woo smirked. My shadows got it covered. Chief Woo, checking the mana levels of Jinwoo's minions, nearly choked on his disbelief. Every single one was B rank or higher. He stammered, trying to process the sheer scale of this one-man raid force. Then he informed Drippy Woo that the chairman had sent him to observe the raid to ensure everything went smoothly. Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you'll be okay in there? Fast forward 5 minutes. Chief Woo was sweating harder than a suspect on a polygraph as he watched Jinwoo's army bulldoze a ranked Naga like it was a level 1 mob. Elite hunters usually struggled against these creatures, but these monsters were nothing more than a feast for his shadows. His eyes then locked onto Egress. That one is especially dangerous, Chief Woo thought, watching the Red Knight cut through enemies like he was born for the kill. Then came the next layer of insanity, lightning magic, the kind only top-tier mages could wield, unleashed with every swing of Egress's sword. Chief Woo muttered under his breath, questioning his own existence. If I fought that thing, would I even survive? Meanwhile, Jinwoo dealt with a minor nuisance, an ant, likely the same one that had attacked the healer girl, munching on a dead monster. Without hesitation, my glorious king kicked it straight into the ceiling. I told you not to eat those. Do you have any idea how much these corpses are worth? Turning to his lower-ranked shadows, he ordered them back to mining mana crystals. Chief Woo's jaw nearly hit the floor. This wasn't a one-man raid. This was something else entirely. Finally, the boss decided to make its grand entrance. Drippy Woo smirked smirked and gave the command. Those of you still working can stay. The rest return. Chief Wu blinked. Why dismiss them? Your summons could solo the boss with their eyes closed. Jinwoo summoned his daggers with a smirk. If I rely on my shadows too much, I'll get rusty. Then, like an anime protagonist entering his final showdown, he blitzed across the boss's body, moving faster than the creature could even react. One clean slice split its face in two, and he flipped through the air as if showing off. Chief Wu was left slack-jawed, years of elite hunting experience melting away. He had never seen anything like this. After bagging the kill, my glorious king checked his stats, another level up and an upgrade to Shadow Exchange. Cooldown reduced by an hour. He realized that, with further leveling, he could teleport wherever he wanted, keeping his family safe. Chief Wu, still processing the disrespect, stared at the corpse. Naga scales were notoriously tough, yet Jinwoo had sliced through them with two daggers like they were paper. Astronomical disrespect. Then Jinwoo flexed harder, activating Shadow Extraction. The boss's corpse twitched and a shadow emerged. A notification popped up. Congrats, you just buffed your new soldier. It starts at level 13. Jinwoo examined the recruit, same rank as Tusk, but smaller, unusual, since shadows normally stayed the same size or grew upon extraction. The mana radiating from this one was off the charts. Almost as strong as Tusk, he named it Jima. Jima rose, and Jinho, ever the fanboy, looked at Jinwoo in awe. How is he so OP? He whispered, admiration written all over his face. But before he could process further, the cave trembled. Jinho immediately pointed at Jinwoo. We should leave. Drippy Woo glanced at the boss's corpse, debating its disposal. Meanwhile, Tusk casually emerged from the gate, hoisting the dead Naga like a grocery bag. As they stepped out, reporters completely lost it, snapping pictures of the summoned beasts and the boss's corpse. The sheer flex of walking out with it like a trophy sent the crowd into a frenzy. Chief Wu, on the other hand, looked like he had survived an apocalypse. His hands were still trembling as he sank into the chairman's office chair, trying to collect his thoughts. What I saw, it wasn't a raid. It was a complete massacre, he stammered, his voice still shaking as he recounted every brutal detail. From the way the summoned shadows moved with surgical precision to how Jinwoo himself never even broke a sweat while mowing through hordes of monsters. The chairman absorbed every word, his face a mask of calm. But inside, the gears were turning. Hunters across Korea, no, across the entire globe, were about to witness a seismic shift in power. A single S-rank hunter, accompanied by a handful of shadows, had just redefined the threshold of what was possible. The magnitude of it left him feeling both awestruck and alarmed. Meanwhile, in Japan, the sky seemed to shatter. A massive red gate tore open the heavens, emanating a malevolent aura so intense that it seemed to ripple across entire cities. The sudden appearance of the S-rank dungeon triggered panic nationwide. Every major guild received emergency summons, and the streets were filled with whispers of impending doom. Even veteran guild members of the Draw Sword Guild, known for their stoicism, looked tense as they made their way to the meeting room. As they entered, low murmurs swirled about President Matsumoto Shigeo's inability to handle the situation without Goto Ryuji. People found the president's floundering strangely amusing. The Hunters Association had long monopolized S-rank hunters, and now for once they were exposed to the same vulnerability as everyone else. Rumors quickly began circulating that the guild could lose its top ranking in Japan. Sugimoto overheard the chatter, his eyes narrowing into death rays that made even the most reckless whisperers rethink their life choices. The instant his glare landed on them, the whisperers froze mid-step, backing away like children caught in a lightning storm. Minoru exhaled heavily, muttering about how no one dared to speak like this when Goto Fraud had been alive. Kanai leaned over and noted that the Black Tiger Guild and Snow Cloud Guild were rumored to be merging, potentially creating a team with 4 S-rank hunters capable of rivaling draw sword numbers. Sugimoto remained unimpressed, dismissing the notion with a flick of his hand. Weaklings with S-rank titles are still weak, he muttered. Across the government, the scene was chaos. Officials demanded answers for why the Hunters Association hadn't acted swiftly on the S-rank gate in Tokyo. Was there a plan, or were they just letting the country get annihilated? Matsumoto Shigeo had no choice but to admit that the existing S-rank hunters were insufficient to handle an S-rank gate without mobilizing national-level forces. Someone quickly suggested calling Thomas Andre the American national-level hunter, but the financial cost was astronomical. On top of that, the worldwide spike in gates meant every nation was hoarding mercenary hunters for themselves, leaving Japan completely short on options. The room went silent, tension thick enough to choke on, until Sugimoto casually mentioned one man who might help. for the right price. Meanwhile, Drippy-Woo, chilling in his car, was already calculating stats like a true min-maxer. Level 101. He'd unlocked the key to the Kartanon Temple at level 100, and now all his job-specific skills had received a significant power boost. Naturally, his mind was racing ahead, already scheming for what level 102 might bring. Every calculation, every stat increase, was another step closer to making his family untouchable. As he stepped from his car, Mommy Cha appeared in the parking lot. The moment she spotted him, she spun on her heel and started walking away. Without missing a beat, Jinwoo blinked out of existence and reappeared next to her, the teleportation signature instantly recognizable. "Where are you running?" he asked, his tone calm but pointed. "If you didn't want to deal with me, why even come to my office?" Flustered, Mommy Cha stammered an excuse about her car still being parked there. But Drippy-Woo knew better. He remembered how last time he had yanked her across the city via shadow exchange, preventing her from taking it. She then got serious, lowering her voice and asking if he had time to talk. "What about?" he asked casually. She mentioned a message left by Min Byung-gu. Drippy-Woo's eyes narrowed immediately. The mention of that name always drew attention. She explained that while she was unconscious on Jeju Island, drifting in darkness, a hand had reached out to pull her from the void. It had been Min Byung-gu. They spoke briefly. He remarked on his new position as Drippy-Woo's subordinate, and then warned Mommy Cha about the true extent of Drippy-Woo's powers. Overwhelming, frightening, and far beyond anything Jinwoo could yet comprehend. He had tried to elaborate on the true nature of Drippy-Woo's army, but vanished before finishing his warning. Later, Drippy-Woo sat alone in a dungeon, deep in thought, the weight of every warning pressing down. The power he now wielded wasn't just immense, it was unprecedented. Understanding the source, the scope, and the consequences of his abilities wasn't just a matter of curiosity, it was necessary. Every new shadow, every stat increase, every ability unlocked was another step toward ensuring he and his family could survive the chaos that was rapidly approaching. And somewhere in the back of his mind, one chilling truth remained. This was only the beginning. This wasn't just about grinding levels anymore. Whatever Jinwoo was standing on now went far beyond simple numbers and stat screens. Jin-ho, sitting beside him, clearly didn't share that realization yet. He groaned like a bored kid stuck on a road trip, whining about why they even bothered showing up in person when the Shadow Army could bulldoze everything without breaking a sweat. Drippy-Woo shook his head slowly, already used to this nonsense. "These idiots need supervision," he replied flatly, making it clear that unattended shadows plus clueless humans was a disaster waiting to happen. Jin-ho shifted gears and asked about his sister. Rizzy-Woo explained that Gina was doing fine after the school dungeon break, but the doctors had insisted she take proper rest. Naturally, Jinwoo didn't trust proper rest to chance, so he stationed his most trusted shadows to guard her around the clock. That last level up hadn't just been a stat boost either. One of the upgrades was shared senses, a terrifyingly convenient ability that allowed Jinwoo to see, hear, and perceive the world directly through his shadows. Curious, he activated shadow vision. His perspective instantly switched to Baru's eyes, and what he saw made him sigh deeply. Baru was sprawled out like he paid rent, watching TV while Gina slept peacefully on the couch. My glorious king stared, unimpressed, wondering if this was really Baru's taste in entertainment. Of course it had to be some over-the-top historical drama. He squinted at the screen. Is this why that dramatic aunt started talking like she's from the Joseon era? Deciding that was enough of that, he checked on the others. His mother was out grocery shopping, perfectly safe. Baek Yoon-ho and Choi Jong-in were bickering like an old married couple, as usual. Then he switched to Mommy Cha and immediately regretted it. She was in the shower. Sung Pervy-woo instantly cut the connection like his life depended on it. Jin-ho, completely unaware of the crime he had just narrowly avoided witnessing, asked if Jinwoo had nodded off. Rizzy-Woo didn't answer. He was too busy mentally screaming and scheduling an apology in advance. Maybe lunch, a really expensive lunch. Trying to change the subject before his brain imploded, Jin-ho asked if Jinwoo had heard about the massive S-rank gate that popped up in Shinjuku. Less than 3 days until a dungeon break. The Japanese government was in full panic mode, calling in anyone with a pulse and a license. Jin-ho asked if they had contacted him. Drippy-Woo nodded. They had. But he had something far more important to deal with. Before Jin-ho could ask what that meant, Jinwoo's gaze drifted to the key in his hand. The truth behind his power was close. Uncomfortably close. With only 1 day left on the timer, answers were coming whether he liked it or not. Meanwhile, over in Japan, the circus had already begun. Yuri Orlov, Russia's strongest hunter, introduced himself to Sugimoto like he owned the building. From the moment he opened his mouth, arrogance poured out nonstop. He proudly declared himself the greatest support-type hunter in the world, then mocked the Draw Sword Guild's situation. He asked bluntly if Japan really only had 6 S-rank hunters to deal with this disaster. Sugimoto confirmed it. Most of their high-rank hunters were stretched thin handling A-rank gates nationwide. Even Draw Sword had been forced to send 3 and leave 1 behind. Yuri scoffed, calling it pathetic, before casually dropping his price. He would hold the gate back for $3.6 billion a year, $10 million a day. Sugimoto froze. Yuri just smirked and added that compared to Thomas Andre's absurd 36 trillion price tag, he was practically a bargain. Minoru leaned toward Kinzaki and whispered what the hell the drunk was saying. Kinzaki, who actually understood Russian, hesitated before admitting that, whatever it was, it definitely wasn't good. Yuri then twisted the knife further, asking if Japan was trying to save their country or just protect their wallets. He added a few extra insults for flavor. Minoru snapped, asking if he'd just been disrespected. Kinzaki confirmed that even without understanding every word, the message was painfully clear. Before anyone could react, a magical barrier slammed down around them. They couldn't move. Yuri grinned, telling them they wouldn't be taking a single step without his permission. Minoru struggled, stunned. How was an S-rank hunter like him getting locked down this easily? Yuri turned back to Sugimoto and promised to stop the S-rank gate. He'd even release them afterward, free of charge. Sugimoto had no choice. He agreed, but insisted on making one phone call first. Back in Korea, my glorious king was preparing to enter the double dungeon. His mother gently asked if she should worry. He smiled and told her it was just an appointment. The moment the key's timer expired, the location revealed itself. Jinwoo's mood instantly shifted. The gate was at Gina's school. He moved without hesitation. When he arrived, Hunter Association agents were already guarding the area. Jinwoo asked how long the gate had been there. He replied, 3 days. It was labeled C rank. The assault squad had entered 2 hours ago. That was all he needed to hear. His aura sharpened instantly. He ordered them to call the squad back immediately. If they stayed inside, they would die. Before anyone could argue, Jinwoo stepped forward and declared he would bring them back himself. Inside the gate, the assault squad had already pushed deep into the dungeon, completely unaware that they were walking straight into a nightmare. The assault squad had finally reached the boss room, yet the massive door refused to budge. Debate and muttering erupted among them as everyone tried to figure out the next move. Was it a trap, a puzzle, or some cursed mechanism waiting to kill them all? Suddenly, a calm, unnerving voice sliced through the commotion from behind. It's a trap. The hunters spun around instinctively, hands on weapons, ready to strike. Their target, a man standing there like he owned the dungeon, Jinwoo. Suspicion etched on one hunter's face. He finally demanded, "Who the hell are you? What are you doing here?" My glorious king answered with that signature, unbothered smirk, letting the words do the heavy lifting. "I'm a survivor of a double dungeon." The words hit like a hammer. Some of the hunters immediately connected the dots. "Wait, aren't you that new S-rank hunter from Korea?" Jinwoo didn't say a word, simply walked up to the sealed door. A system notification appeared above it. "The gate to the Kartanon Temple is currently locked. Please insert the key." He pulled out the temple key, noting the subtle difference from last time, and inserted it. The door creaked open like it was groaning under the weight of decades, revealing a chamber that left the hunters gaping in disbelief. They had thrown everything at it before, yet the dungeon hadn't even flinched. One hunter, puffing up with misplaced bravado, stepped forward and declared, "This dungeon is property of the Dragon Guild. You may be an S-rank, but you can't just—" Jinwoo interrupted casually, his voice slicing through the bravado like a blade. "I won't stop you. Anyone who wants to enter, feel free." The bravest of the bunch stepped in immediately, eager to prove himself. Almost immediately, the system pinged Jinwoo. "An individual without the temple key has entered. Access denied." Before the hunter could react, a stone statue materialized from the shadows, swinging a sword the size of a car door. Jinwoo moved with unthinkable speed, yanking the hunter back and saving him in the nick of time. His eyes swept across the room, icy and calculating. "Every monster in this dungeon is like that. You still want to go in?" He then turned to the remaining assault squad, issuing the next orders with calm authority. "Call the Hunter Association. Tell them a double dungeon has appeared." And then he paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "We handle this ourselves." Without another word, he stepped through the gate. The door slammed behind him with a deafening echo, sealing him inside. The moment he entered, the chamber lit up with a dim, eerie glow. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the room, and dozens of stone statues stood motionless, like guardians frozen in time. At the center, a single figure sat, surrounded by the silent, unmoving minions. Jinwoo's eyes scanned the room, taking everything in. He muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "This is where it all began, but it feels different now. Something's changed." Focusing on the statues, he noted subtle patterns in their arrangement, their postures, the faint glow of mana. "These aren't monsters or living beings. Puppets," he whispered, his tone grim. "And there's only one hand pulling the strings." Locking his gaze on the source, he demanded, voice sharp and commanding, "Won't you speak? Why remain silent?" The silence shattered as one winged statue's eyes gleamed with a cold, unnatural light. A grin spread across its stony face as it spoke, voice echoing like metal grinding on stone. "At last, you have arrived." Meanwhile, elsewhere, Drippy-Woo was occupied with his own side quest in Japan. At the same time, the walking magical battery Yuri Orlov, had just touched down at the airport. Reporters swarmed him like he was the hottest idol in the world, cameras flashing incessantly. Ignoring them, he faced the barrage of questions head-on. How will you block the S-rank gate? Can you really hold it solo? Cool and composed, Yuri explained his plan. He would carve a massive magic circle around the gate, pour in his mana, and trap whatever was inside. Alone, he couldn't maintain a barrier indefinitely, but with strategically placed mana crystals around Tokyo, the circle would siphon energy and evolve into an unbreakable seal. Staring into the cameras, he issued a bold, ego-fueled promise. I'm going to save your lives. Remember that. Back in Korea, Chairman Go Gun-Hee exhaled deeply. Unsure if Yuri could pull it off, he knew exactly what failure would mean. Turning to Woo Jin-chul, he asked for a status update on My Glorious King. Wu reported that Drippy Woo was in Seoul, farming gates at an insane speed. The Ajin Guild had filed permits on multiple gates, some in territories managed by the White Tiger Hunters and Fiend Guilds, a recipe for diplomatic disaster. Despite the potential chaos, the chairman approved everything. Before leaving, Wu took a call. Another gate had appeared at a school previously devastated by orcs. Initially thought minor, it was hiding a double dungeon. More importantly, My Glorious King had already entered. Inside the death trap, Jinwoo now stood before the living statue. The statue shattered a massive stone slab with a single motion and said, voice booming, I see you finally made it this far. Jinwoo asked, almost rhetorically, if it was necessary to destroy the slab in such a dramatic fashion. The statue, grin unshaken, replied, the commandments once mattered, but now they are irrelevant. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. The game had begun, and the rules were changing, whether this ancient puppet liked it or not. My Glorious King narrowed his eyes, staring straight at the statue and demanded, who are you? His voice echoed through the chamber. Were you the one who dragged me into this nightmare? The statue answered in the most infuriatingly cryptic way possible, its stone lips curling slightly. Yes, but you are asking the wrong question. It leaned forward just enough to feel condescending. Instead of asking who I am, you should be asking who you are. Before Drippy Woo could tell this rock cosplay enthusiast to stop talking like a fortune cookie, the statue cut him off. The final test begins now. If you are still standing when it ends, I will tell you everything. The air shifted instantly. The statues surrounding him began to move, their heavy footsteps echoing as they advanced with mechanical precision, like murder machines running preloaded software. Pure instinct kicked in. My Glorious King reached for his shadows. Snap. The being snapped its fingers and everything stopped. That won't do, it said coldly. This is a test. No cheating. Its voice dropped lower. Your little minions mean nothing to me. I am only interested in you. As if the universe wanted to rub salt in the wound, a system message appeared. No potions, no items, no quest rewards, no status recovery. Leaving is prohibited until the test concludes. Drippy Woo exhaled slowly. So that's how you want to play it. Right on cue, a stone statue lunged at him, swinging a weapon the size of a refrigerator. But Jinwoo was already moving. His mind raced. Inventory still works. No summons, no buffs, no safety net, just raw stats and hands rated E for everyone. He caught the blade mid-swing with one hand like it was a cheap prop, shattered it effortlessly, and for maximum disrespect, grabbed one half of the broken sword and launched it straight into the statue's face. The impact cracked stone, but the thing didn't fall. It reached up, trying to yank the shard out of its skull. Big mistake. Drippy Woo was already airborne. His foot slammed into the embedded blade, driving it deeper as the statue collapsed into rubble beneath him. That's when the rest of the statues collectively realized they weren't the boss fight. They were the tutorial enemies. They rushed him, hoping numbers would save them. It didn't. Jinwoo flowed between their attacks like living shadow. Every movement sharp, efficient, and brutal. He leapt, dagger flashing, and drove it clean through another statue's head, reducing it to debris. His gaze snapped toward an archer statue foolish enough to believe distance meant safety. An arrow screamed through the air. He sliced it in half mid-flight. Then, because why not, kicked one of the broken pieces straight back. It smashed through the archer's face, detonating stone everywhere. Every strike was deliberate, every kill surgical. From above, the floating entity observed silently before speaking again. To achieve this much with the body of a human, impressive. Jinwoo didn't slow down. What once looked like teleportation was now just controlled dominance. He could keep going. He would keep going. The entity smirked. Remarkable growth, but it is far too early for this to end. A deep rumble shook the chamber. The remaining statues froze, as if acknowledging something far more terrifying. Slowly, My Glorious King turned. A colossal stone behemoth rose into view, dwarfing everything he'd faced so far. The entity's voice echoed darkly. Now, it is time to worship the god. Scene shift. Chairman Go Gun-Hee was sitting in his office, ready to enjoy a rare moment of peace, when Japan showed up with desperation in one hand and a suitcase of bribes in the other. Matsumoto Shigeo slid a contract across the table. The message was simple. Take all the Jeju Island essence stones. We're broke. We're terrified. Please send the aura farmer. Gun-Hee skimmed it once and shut it down immediately. Sung Jinwoo is not affiliated with the Hunter Association. You can't order him. Matsumoto nodded. I know. I only want you to arrange a meeting. Gun-Hee almost laughed. No nation throws this much money around just to talk. Then it clicked. Goto Ryuji was dead. Japan's defenses were now made of hopes and prayers. Matsumoto tried to keep up appearances, but Gun-Hee had no patience left. He dismissed the translators, switched to fluent Japanese, and leaned forward. Drop the act. You think I don't know the Blade Guild ghosted you? The words landed hard. After Goto died, they stopped taking your money and went independent. He tapped the paperwork. Your entire system is collapsing. Your grip on your hunters is weaker than a level 1 stepping into an S-rank dungeon. Then Gun-Hee made it personal. He placed a recording device on the table, the same type used by Goto's team. This has been feeding intel straight to you. His aura flared as he interrogated Matsumoto, whose expression now looked like someone just leaked his entire search history. Gun-Hee crushed the device in one hand. The table shattered beneath it. For a moment, it looked like he might test how durable Matsumoto's spine was. Instead, he leaned in and said quietly, if Tokyo gets wiped by that gate, your head will roll. And when the world asks who ruined Japan, the answer will be you. But Gun-Hee wasn't about to get petty for petty's sake. One man's blunder wasn't going to burn down an entire country. He silently thanked the aura farmer for keeping Asia from turning into a dumpster fire of mana and chaos. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Jinwoo wasn't taking a breather. Stone statues continued marching like they were auditioning for a demolition crew, each one swinging massive limbs and weapons that could crush a car. The big guy at the back, eyes glowing red, wasn't even subtle. It charged like the embodiment of a boss fight warning, beams slicing the air with enough force to vaporize a minor city. Jinwoo analyzed instantly. Dodge wasn't an option. Instead, he used Commander's touch, lifting a couple of statues to build a makeshift meat shield. The beam tore through like paper. The floor under him cracked under the shockwave, barely giving him a moment to breathe. A direct hit? BBQ'd Wu, no question. Commander's authority received its final upgrade mid-chaos, but he barely had time to appreciate it. He glanced at the towering menace and decided first the god, then the rest. Drippy Wu dipped forward, feet slamming the stone floor so hard it fractured like credit scores during tax season. The statue paused, smug, thinking it had him cornered. But before it could finish charging, Jinwoo blinked and reappeared behind it with Monarch's domain layered on top. Gravity bent to his will like a piece of clay. He barely even touched his mana pool, but the results were catastrophic. Mountains could have been tossed as easily as pebbles. He unleashed mutilation, dagger first, aiming for its face. The Demon King daggers barely nicked the stone, and his frustration bubbled over. No finesse, no subtlety, pure raw muscle. He slammed his fist down at a vulnerable crack in the head, hammering like he was trying to split a coconut for the entire kingdom to see. The statue flinched as if it had just realized its insurance premium had doubled overnight. From above, the winged floating entity gawked. He went caveman on my precious stone buddy. And it works? Incredible. Jinwoo didn't stop. He turned the oversized statue into rubble, slammed it into the floor, and immediately jumped into the swarm of baby statues. Dominator's touch flattened them like pancakes in one devastating sweep. Dust settled. He turned, eyes locking on the floating problem above. Who thought they could slow clap in his dungeon? After wiping out the stone army, he expected dialogue, or at least some kind of acknowledgement. But Bird Boy, the so-called architect, smiled smugly. Not done yet. Final test timer, 10 minutes. Fail, and your heart stops. The air grew thick. Jinwoo's aura flared. Who even are you? The emo pigeon descended, wings folding into grotesque fist-like shapes. I am the architect of the system. Satisfied? Outside, Wu Jinchul arrived like Fast and Furious. S-rank edition, 7 elite hunters in tow. But the second they stepped near the gate, the mana hit them like a tidal wave. Cold, ancient, and almost alive. Wu paused, looked at his men, and asked, "Y'all feel that? This isn't normal. This is god level." The Hunter Guild lineup was ready, with names that could make kingdoms quake. Mami Cha, Choi Jong, all primed for war. Inside the dungeon, Jin Wu, still covered in sweat and swag, wasn't getting a breather. The emo cherub himself, the architect, launched him backward like a ragdoll mod. His feathery wings warped and twisted, reshaping into arms and fists that fired off faster than common sense. Jin Wu braced himself because apparently today was punch day. The architect chased him down with a flurry of blows like Jinwoo owed the system 3 years of unpaid child support. Yet even while on the defensive, Jinwoo didn't crumble. That alone made the architect freeze mid-combo, eyes wide like, hold on, that wasn't in the code. Jinwoo returned the favor by blasting him back with a brutal counterpunch. One so disrespectful, it sent the architect recoiling like he'd just opened an IRS audit notice addressed to him. Instead of getting mad or scared, the architect giggled like a malfunctioning supervillain. Well, maybe humans aren't complete garbage, he purred. Jinwoo immediately clocked that this celestial goth genuinely underestimated him. You thought he'd crash at level 100? Buddy, this isn't a mobile game. Hungry for answers, Jinwoo demanded to know why he'd been chosen, why the system existed, and what brand of apocalypse was preparing to stroll through the world. The architect just smirked and dropped a line colder than outer space. Maybe you think killing me will cost you those answers. He slowly walked forward. Jinwoo took distance, activating Commander's touch, hoping for ranged control. But the architect read him like a grocery list and detonated an AoE blast that screamed, "No zoning allowed." Turns out this Mothman possessed the same hacks as the king, meaning ranged combat was basically disabled. The winged psycho encouraged him to go all out, promising that killing him wouldn't stop the truth. "You'll receive the answers either way," he boasted. Jinwoo demanded to know how he could design something like the system, and why Jinwoo was the chosen one. But then came the twist. "I didn't choose you," the architect confessed. "I was against it from the beginning. The system chose you itself." 6 minutes left on the death timer. No more warm-up punches. The architect floated upward, ascending like a divine raid boss, about to switch to Phase 2. Jinwoo's instincts exploded awake. His body moved before thought, Ultra Instinct-style dodges, weaving through blows like he'd trained for this moment his whole life. The architect, stunned, whispered internally, "How? I'm using full force, and he's not just blocking, he's countering." Then came the disrespect. Jinwoo sliced clean through the architect's arm without hesitation. The architect stuttered, shocked that despite inhabiting a constructed body, the pain still hit. And worse, the thing buried inside Jinwoo, the reason he had been selected, began stirring. The architect exploded in rage. "How dare a human injure me?" With a scream, he summoned every stone soldier in sight. Black Friday rushed toward aisle 5. 3 minutes left. Jinwoo surged forward, shadows bursting, weapons tearing through the air, authority warping space. This wasn't a test anymore. This was a battlefield. A stone fist the size of a delivery truck missed Jinwoo by a pixel. He slipped past reality and decapitated another arm like a Fruit Ninja combo streak. The architect hurled him into a wall, but Jinwoo barely flinched. That was because his old trauma lumbered into view. The same stone guardian that once put him in a coma had returned. Jinwoo greeted it with unfiltered revenge. One devastating blow obliterated it, crushing stone and ego alike. 2 minutes on the clock. Jinwoo turned toward the architect, channeling every last ounce of power into a final assault. The explosion that followed looked like Michael Bay gained access to divine special effects. When the dust cleared, the architect lay collapsed. Jinwoo stood firm, radiating final boss energy. The architect rasped that Jinwoo's answers lay within himself. Jinwoo internally grumbled, "Great, a cryptic fortune cookie quest." A system prompt appeared. Retrieve data? He hesitated, but clicked yes. Reality warped. His consciousness dissolved. Light twisted. Space folded. And suddenly, Jinwoo drifted in ghost form over a battlefield that looked like Elden Ring DLC. Below, countless races lined up. Goblins, giants, ice elves. An army united, staring upward. Floating above them was a massive cosmic gate radiating final chapter energy. Jinwoo knew immediately. If these creatures stepped through into the human world, humanity was done. Then silver warriors descended, celestial soldiers with radiant wings and blades sharper than tax fraud loopholes. They carved through the monster army like a divine slaughterhouse. Then everything froze. The Shadow Monarch finally descended. His presence warped gravity, his authority swallowing the field. He activated his domain. Shadows erupted. Corpses rose. The dead returned. An undead legion fueled by rage and smoke. The Silver Warriors were overwhelmed. One swing from the monarch felt like reality folding. The battlefield bent beneath his dominion. Shadow soldiers died, revived, an endless horror loop. Jinwoo watched the cloaked figure stride through carnage like boredom incarnate, slicing divine beings apart as if filing paperwork. Just when victory seemed imminent, plot armor whispered, "Not yet." Back in the double dungeon, Woo Jin-chul arrived with Korea's Avengers, Mommy Cha and Pretty Boy Choi. But the second they sensed the mana leaking from the chamber, everyone froze. Cha's instincts flared. This energy wasn't Jinwoo's. Inside, shattered stone statues lay scattered across the room like divine leftovers from a tantrum. Woo Jin-chul stared, remembering Jinwoo's warnings about the double dungeon, whispering, trembling. So, it was all real. A chilling voice seeped through the air. "I don't recall inviting humans into this place." The hunters snapped their attention upward, shocked that a monster could speak human language, and now understood this was no ordinary dungeon. The architect waltzed in like he was auditioning for the villain lead in a Broadway musical, and immediately snapped, "Quiet, how dare you wake the king from his nap?" The hunters froze mid-breath, blinking at each other, wondering which king this dude was talking about. Did he summon Dracula in the corner or something? Then their eyes landed on him. Jinwoo, not dead, not moving, just standing there like a buffering apocalypse, radiating that "don't even think about it" boss energy. And just like that, chaos erupted. The architect shot through the hunters like a blender plugged directly into a caffeine IV. Two unlucky souls didn't make it past the opening credits. He yelled something about humans being perfect offerings, and suddenly everyone remembered they'd skipped their will writing appointments. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was off in his own cinematic universe. His mind had gone full Netflix original, watching portals open like VIP entrances, and the council of villains marching in with monarch armies as if this were the halftime show of hell. Quaratia, the Plague Monarch, Baran, the Demon King, Raycon, the Beast Monarch, and a zoo's worth of nightmare CEOs assembled like they were trying out for a corporate horror anthology. The Beast Monarch even sent his oversized wolf snarling in glorious high definition, probably to remind everyone that CGI-level pets still bite. The monarchs lined up like a board meeting gone very, very wrong, and Shadow Daddy was about to drop the mic. Back in the dungeon, it was absolute hell. Hunters were scrambling like ants in a heat wave, and Choi was screaming orders as if his life depended on it, because it did. The healer was busy patching up the wounded, while the architect monologued like he had plot armor stitched into his veins. "Survive," he said smugly, "and you'll witness the king's rebirth." Then the big guy stirred, shooting lasers like a sun lamp on steroids, trying to incinerate everyone in sight. Choi warned, "Watch out, that oversized boulder's moving, and it's not in a good mood." Discounted Inez tried to play hero with some firepower, making a diversion, while Jinchul punched a statue like it owed him money, but immediately realized that these stone jerks were harder than a final exam in calculus. Choi intervened with a fireball, yelling caution. Physical attacks barely scratched them, and magic? Ha, forget it. Mommy Cha was sweating too. She whispered to Choi that Haunt's skill wasn't doing squat. In short, nothing in their arsenal was working. Yep, they'd hit the ultimate try everything, fail everything checkpoint. Discounted Inez, realizing they were basically auditioning for the role of Snack in this horror show, thought maybe it was time to wake Jinwoo, their only hope of surviving this nightmare. But the stone statues had other ideas, stopping the fireball mid-flight. Then one flexed its aura and charged at Choi, all offended that someone dared attack the king while he was sleeping. The hunters told Mommy Cha to try holding the line while she woke their king, because clearly this was a multitasking day. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was still in the dream realm, watching Shadow Daddy go full action hero. Comparing himself to this guy? Forget it. He didn't even register on the same power scale. Shadow Daddy was moving like he had a cheat code plugged in, obliterating monsters and silver soldiers alike, and Jinwoo was trying to take notes, mentally screaming, "How the hell am I supposed to compete with this?" Then realization hit like a truck. The silver soldiers in play had betrayed Shadow Daddy. Oh boy. Humans, monsters, and betrayal. Today's forecast was guaranteed chaos. Shadow Daddy stormed up to Baran, the Demon King, and demanded an explanation. Baran, apparently auditioning for most obnoxious monster ever, smirked and spat random nonsense in monster language. Shadow Daddy's eyes screamed murder, repeating the question with lethal intent. Baran, blissfully unaware, kept talking nonsense, pissing Shadow Daddy off even more. Shadow Daddy grabbed Baran with Commander's touch, squeezing his skull like it was a stress ball during audit season. Pop. Just like opening a soda can, Baran's helmet and skull were yeeted from existence. Deleted. Gone. Rizuu's POV was now fully in play. He saw Baran's demise from inside the action cam. No lag, no vision filter, just raw villain juice reality. Then it got even stranger. Rizuu's chest was pounding, like dual processors running at max. Two heartbeats echoed. One was his own. The other pulsed with something ancient, alien, uncomfortably powerful. As he processed this power-up DLC-level fever dream, more silver soldiers poured in from the gate. The system hit him with a notification. Playback ended. Back in the dungeon, the architect, aka Birdbrain, grinned like a cat who found a laser pointer amusing for the second time today. He looked at Mommy Cha, muttered, "Interesting one," then flipped his manic switch. He demanded she push beyond her design. Mommy Cha, unbothered, activated her sword dance, prepared to shred or be shredded. Birdbrain lost it immediately. Clashing swords with Mommy Cha, she stepped back, impressed she hadn't lost a limb yet. He pointed his blade and taunted, "Is that all you've got?" Then he dropped a line so extra even Aizen would blink. "Everything is going according to plan." Choi wanted to rush over and protect her, but Birdbrain was busy bragging about his system, claiming it could predict and counter everything. Basically, Big Brother meets villain cosplay. Watching the hunters flail like penguins in a tornado, the architect scoffed, "Pathetic. You think your little toys and sad attempts can dismantle my masterpiece?" By now, he'd gotten bored enough to actually step in himself. He fired off a fireball, which landed about as impressively as a wet balloon in a hurricane, and yelled at Mommy Cha that if they wanted to leave in one piece, they had better wake up my glorious king pronto. Birdbrain's attention snapped toward her like a cat spotting a laser pointer, and Mommy Cha sprinted to wake her husband. The architect, not even noticing Choi standing there, immediately went after her. He slammed the floor with enough force to make tectonic plates nervous. Mommy Cha barely dodged, and even bruised and battered, she pulled it off. The architect blinked. Impressed? Slightly. That's when he noticed a shadow lurking beside her. Rules of the dungeon meant it couldn't fully emerge, but the existence alone piqued his curiosity. "What's your relationship with my glorious king?" he asked Mommy Cha, intrigued. Without missing a beat, she replied, "Friend, I came to save him." Fearless and utterly unflinching, her answer made the architect smirk. This one was ripe for a lifetime of trauma. "Today," he said, voice dripping with glee, "a great monarch shall descend upon this world. You will witness it, assuming everyone here dies first." By now, the giant stone statues had crushed most of the hunters, and the scene looked grim. He opened his beak for another dramatic speech, but finally the king had had enough. From the shadows, Jinwoo rose, hard, pulverizing. He punched Birdbrain with enough force to make next Tuesday worry about its structural integrity. The architect slammed into the ground, and Jinwoo demanded answers about what the hell had been done to his body. The other hunters gawked, mouths open like they'd stumbled onto a live-action tutorial in god-tier beatdowns. Even Mommy Cha's cheeks were faintly red. Embarrassment? Awe? Probably both. Jinwoo pinned Birdbrain, pressing a foot onto his smug little beak until it shattered like cheap porcelain. The architect gasped, horror spreading across his twisted features. You're not the king I expected." Jinwoo said nothing, letting the silence speak volumes. The architect, desperate for any shred of control, asked how Jinwoo had regained consciousness with a black heart embedded in him. Jinwoo, feeling the god-tier mana surging through every vein, realized the truth. This was the Black Heart's doing. A system panel confirmed it casually, as if announcing the weather. Mana, plus 100,000. Birdbrain's face contorted in panic. Jinwoo, recalling the system's recall data, realized the jigsaw puzzle was still missing pieces. He demanded answers. What was a player? What had Birdbrain's twisted plan actually been? But the architect was busy losing his mind, screaming about how Shadow Daddy had double-crossed him. Done with the theatrics, Jinwoo summoned his daggers, pinning Birdbrain further into the ground. The architect, attempting a last-ditch smug moment, sneered, "If you kill me, your statues won't stop." Jinwoo, dead-eyed and exasperated, replied simply, "Then I'll kill your statues too." Birdbrain sputtered, claiming he was essential to the system. But Jinwoo shut him down cold. One moron's death wouldn't collapse the system. Without hesitation, Jinwoo seized control of the system. Birdbrain, horrified, tried to use his admin access, but the system ignored him. Jinwoo now commanded it. Watching the architect's dignity evaporate, Jinwoo smirked. "Once I thought I needed the system as much as it needed me. Now, I'll devour it whole." He mocked Birdbrain one final time. "Your design? Flawed." Then, activating Mutilate, Jinwoo diced the architect into tiny pieces. Each slice a symphony of absolute dominance. Bleeding out, Birdbrain croaked one last prophecy about fiery pillars and Jinwoo's death. "Jinwoo?" He smiled. "Bring it on," he said, utterly unbothered. Outside, the association members waited. The elite hunters had been in the dungeon for an hour, and the silence was stretching longer than a filler arc in One Piece. Just as the tension was about to warrant group therapy, the hunters staggered back, looking like they'd been run through a meat grinder on expert difficulty. Even the elite squads appeared one sneeze from collapse. Officials blinked, thinking, wait, what the actual hell happened in there? Woo Jin-chul marched up to the Bravery Guild members. "Move the bodies," he said. Shocked, traumatized, and far too busy questioning life choices, they complied like NPCs accepting a quest they didn't want. Through the chaos, Jinwoo emerged, calm, lost in thought. The system architect was gone, but the answers he sought still hadn't arrived. Woo Jin-chul pulled him aside, explaining that nearly 20 top-ranked hunters had been turned into human-bagged corpses today. If this had been a dungeon break, the city would have been serving monster meat for breakfast. He asked how Jinwoo even knew about the double dungeon. Jinwoo shrugged. "It summoned me," he said, as casually as if explaining the weather. Finding Jinwoo's answer odd, Jin-chul squinted at him. "Wait, you mean to say this message only exists in your head?" Jinwoo shrugged, clearly not impressed with human limitations, and told him that, yes, unfortunately, telepathy hadn't made it to S-rank hunters yet. Jin-chul, wisely deciding not to dig further, just nodded. Sometimes curiosity is deadly. It was clear to everyone now. Jinwoo wasn't fabricating stories. Mommy Cha slid into view, concern plastered across her face, checking if the king was okay. "I'm fine," Jinwoo mumbled. But the combined exhaustion of everything, Shadow Daddy, the architect, and every godforsaken statue, hit him like a truck. He collapsed, landing in a heap that might have qualified as a softcore seismic event. Meanwhile, across the sea in Japan, a completely different brand of chaos was setting up. Trucks stacked high with mana crystals were barreling toward the S-rank gate, like someone had decided to summon Cthulhu using Amazon Prime same-day delivery. Yuri Orlov, standing there with the smug arrogance of a man who's never had a deadline or consequence, announced that 200,000 tons of mana crystals should be enough to fire up the magic circle he'd so painstakingly crafted. The moment the circle activated, the barrier began slurping up magic like a vacuum in overdrive. But Yuri paused. Something was off. One of his lackeys asked if everything was okay. Yuri gave them the kind of smirk that screamed, "Everything's fine, except the end of humanity might be in 5 minutes." When they pressed for clarification on who might be the problem, Yuri casually said, "I never said it was a person." From a nearby rooftop, a figure observed the scene like the early spawn of a final boss, Song Il-hwan. His smirk practically radiated, knowing disaster was assembling itself with all the elegance of a bull in a china shop. Down below, Kenna whispered nervously to Sugimoto, asking why the military was deploying tanks when bullets were about as effective against monsters as a wet tissue. Sugimoto, staring at the gate like it personally owed him money, deadpanned, "If Yuri fails, these pawns, soldiers, need to stall the monsters just long enough for the hunters to prep." Kana realized the grim truth. The soldiers weren't a fighting force. They were bait, sacrificial lambs for a dinner table of monsters. Sugimoto, eyes locked on the gate, muttered grimly, "This isn't a battle. It's a funeral march where humanity flexes just how fragile it really is," probably prompting God to mutter, "Good luck, idiots." Meanwhile, Yuri Orlov, drunk on his own hubris, was busy convincing himself that he could solo an S-rank gate. His little superhero alter ego even had a name picked out, the man who cleared an S-rank gate alone. He popped open a bottle with the kind of swagger reserved for someone pretending they aren't internally wetting themselves. Just as he raised it in a self-congratulatory toast, the man behind him, whose only function seemed to be stating obvious warnings, muttered, "Might not be the wisest choice, sir." Yuri waved him off, promising the best show this side of hell. "By the way," he asked casually, "how many S-rank hunters do we have on standby?" The agent replied, 15. Yuri nodded as if 15 hunters were enough to casually run interference for a literal apocalypse. And then the gate cracked. The Japanese S-rank gate began to fracture as if whispering, "Not today, Yuri." Back in Korea, Jinwoo snapped awake in a hospital bed, every muscle screaming rebellion, and his body felt heavier than existential dread at 3 a.m. He blinked groggily, eyes landing on Jin-ho, who immediately burst into tears. Jinwoo, with the emotional subtlety of a brick wall, cut to business. "How's the S-rank gate in Japan?" No greetings, no pleasantries, just business. The memory rewound. Back to the nightmare day, the dungeon break went nuclear. Giants, massive, terrifying enough to make A-rank dungeon bosses look like stuffed toys, poured through the gates. Even the bravest hunters wondered if rolling on the ground and hoping for mercy was a viable option. Yuri, thinking he had pressed the God Mode button, unleashed his mana crystal-powered barrier. For a brief, glorious moment, it held. Yuri's grin widened. "Yes, I've got this." He imagined the acceptance speech he'd give, maybe a handshake with destiny itself. And then the real monster appeared, a towering freak whose aura screamed, "Final boss of your nightmares." With a casual flick of its weapon, it shattered Yuri's barrier like it was tissue paper. Reality snapped back to the present. At that exact moment, Chairman Myung-han woke from his 23-hour nap in the office. He blinked at his secretary. "How long was I out?" 23 hours, sir. We were about to call an ambulance if you hadn't woken before 24. The secretary said, with the kind of deadpan tone you use when reporting a mild apocalypse. Documents were handed over. The patient recently cured of eternal slumber? Apparently it was Hunter Sung Jinwoo's mother. Yu Myung-han's curiosity piqued. Could Jinwoo have the power to cure eternal sleep? Before he could dwell too long, someone arrived to meet him. She glanced at Yu Myung-han's pale, slightly disoriented state, and asked how long he'd been like that. Back in Japan, the aftermath of the S-rank dungeon break was horrifying. Yuri Orlov, absolutely devoured by one of the giants. The military's futile attempts at defense were pathetic. Their guns might as well have been shooting water balloons. Chairman Matsumoto Shigeo of Japan's Hunter Association barked orders at the remaining S-ranks. Stop the giants from advancing. All of them charged. They aimed for the eyes, tried blinding the giants, but these monsters were surprisingly fast. Every strike dodged, every move anticipated. Humanity's last hope was looking more like a scene from a disaster movie, and yes, someone definitely forgot the script. Hunter Kanai Tawada blinked, absolutely flabbergasted, wondering how the hell these skyscraper-sized monsters could move faster than his morning coffee kicked in. Meanwhile, back in Korea, my glorious king was lounging in his room, watching live feeds of the chaos in Japan, sipping his thoughts like a fine whiskey. His mind wandered back to the Jeju Island raid. If things kept going at this rate, all of Asia might be in danger again. He considered just teleporting over himself, because honestly, who else could handle this mess? But before he could even pack his favorite hoodie, a voice stopped him. Turning around, he found his younger sister Gina, standing there with that mix of concern and I'm not letting you do something stupid again. Look, what's wrong? Jinwoo asked. I know you're planning to go, she said simply. Jinwoo raised an eyebrow. I'm not going anywhere. Been grinding too hard lately. Just resting a bit. Don't worry. Gina frowned, unconvinced, but didn't argue further. Some battles didn't need words. Some battles just needed a sister to glare hard enough to dent your soul. Later, we see him outside, sitting on a park bench like a king waiting for a coffee refill from fate itself. Summoning Baru, he asks casually about Gina. Anything off with her? Baru shakes his head. Nothing abnormal. Jinwoo, however, isn't convinced. Trauma has a funny way of sneaking in silently. She'd never tried to stop him before, not since that first raid 4 years ago. He wonders quietly what he should do. As if on cue, a black sedan screeches to a stop in front of him. Fast forward. Jinwoo is now in the sleek, intimidating office of Yujin Construction Guild. CEO Yu Myung-han greets him with a smile that says, I own more money than your brain cells combined, and slides a blank check across the desk. I'm not arrogant enough to believe money can buy everything, he says, voice measured, but when speaking to an S-rank hunter, consider this a token of my sincerity. Jinwoo's instincts tingle. Whatever comes next, confidential. Definitely not a casual guild invite. What exactly do you want from me? Yu Myung-han leans in, eyes serious. I suffer from the same illness that afflicted your mother, eternal slumber. Jinwoo's brow furrows. Does Jinho know? Only my physician and 3 others are aware. Yu replies carefully. I've searched everywhere for a cure. The only person ever to recover? Your mother. I don't believe that's coincidence. I need your help, and I won't forget your kindness. Jinwoo's mind drifts to Gina. Today, he realizes he has to make a choice. Fast forward to Japan. Reporters hover above like it's a live tourist attraction, while titanic monstrosities stomp around below, making Godzilla look like a cute chihuahua. One reporter squawks into a mic. What happens if these titans get pissed and charge? His coworker hits him with the classic trust the science line. They'll be fine, as long as you stay far away. Cameras zoom on a megaboss standing at the gate like it's waiting for a royal invitation to throw hands. The cameraman whispers, is that thing even alive? It's just standing there. Reporter, yes, alive. And only 2 of the 30 giants have been killed in 2 days. If this continues, Earth might just get wiped off the map. Back in Korea, Jinwoo lounges in his office when Jinho bursts in, panic written across his face. Unlike Jeju Island, this is next-level catastrophe. These monsters are built like skyscrapers on steroids. Jinwoo, calm as ever. If I pull this off, the Jin Guild goes global, he mutters, like casually ordering coffee. He notices Jinho hesitating, which is rare. Usually Jinho worships the ground Jinwoo walks on. I'll go, but I'm coming with you, he says. I'm tired of being the background NPC, Jinho reminds him. Every near-death experience Jinwoo has had one thing in common. Jinho was conveniently missing. The man's only skill? Following like a golden retriever on caffeine. And he takes pride in it. Jinwoo chuckles internally. A rich kid talking about pride like he's not made of money. I'll follow you anywhere, Jinho says. If you're safe, I'm safe. Jinwoo stands, feigning authority. Ha ha. Gotcha. Now go home, sidekick. But as soon as Jinho leaves, Jinwoo's mind drifts back to that creepy architect from the Double Dungeon. If the guy really exists, then Jinwoo is still a mid-tier player in a high-stakes game. Monsters stronger than him? Check. No choice but to keep leveling up? Absolutely. He heads home to find his mom waiting with dinner. He asks about Gina, locked in her room, skipping meals. The incident had hit her hard. While eating, Jinwoo ponders Jinho's dad, allegedly cursed with eternal nap mode. Real or excused to avoid meetings forever? Doesn't matter. Limited magic healing juice means strategic choices. After dinner, he checks on Gina. Silent, stone-cold quiet. He tells her he almost died again. Happens often, but this time really felt like game over. I made it back. Thank you. He pats her head. I'll come back again. And thanks for stopping me from doing something stupid this time, too. Tears in her eyes, Gina fires the classic little sister guilt trip. You would have dipped no matter what. Jinwoo just smiles. Yeah, but I always come back. Then press conference time. Chairman Go Gun-Hee tries to calm the masses, while Jinwoo is already packing bags like he's about to solo an entire country. Cut to Japan. Full panic mode. Military squads scramble through smoking rubble, dragging civilians away from collapsed buildings while skyscraper-sized giants stomp around like toddlers discovering Godzilla roleplay. One soldier yells at survivors to stop sobbing and move faster unless they want to be redecorated by a giant footprint. Just when hope hits rock bottom, one of the giants suddenly gets skewered across the street by a massive trident, impaled like somebody hit delete enemy from long range. Soldiers freeze and look up like, who just did that? The camera pans dramatically. King Sung himself arrives. Riziwoo materialized like a thunderstorm wrapped in drip. Before they can comprehend the god that descended, boulders rain toward a group of civilians. Jinho leaps ahead with a shield bigger than his sense of entitlement, shield bashing literal mountain fragments away. He yells that Jinwoo should handle the extermination, while he deals with saving squishy humans. Jima and Jinwoo move together, stepping into the battlefield like tag team champions. Jima rips giants apart like cardboard props from a kaiju movie. Jinwoo jumps in at the perfect moment and slices another titan clean in half. from neck to belly button. Meanwhile, across the ocean in the US, the Scavenger Guild is busy doing their favorite activity, running their mouths. One of them points out that Sung Jinwoo never even received Lady Selner's stat buff. Another clown laughs, claiming every hunter hits their limit, and Jinwoo will croak sooner rather than later. Suddenly, silence. Thomas Andre enters the room, aura thick like a raid boss sliding in for a cutscene. He casually bets the entire guild headquarters that Sung will survive Japan. Then he tells them to stop doom-scrolling Tokyo footage and pay attention to the S-rank gate forming right in their backyard, implying the US is about to have its own funeral procession. Back in Japan, cameras captured Jinwoo's shadow army, transforming the battlefield into a brutal buffet. Baru's buggy squad peels apart a giant, like it owes them 2 years of unpaid taxes. Another giant chases a little girl. Seconds before she becomes a chew toy, a shadow knight appears and slices off the giant's reaching hand. Egress glides in like a gothic prince, scoops the girl out of danger, and keeps moving without theatrics. The giant glances at its missing hand before Iron body slams into frame and crushes its skull like it's a prop watermelon at WrestleMania. Iron flexes dramatically over the corpse, while Egress stares like he regrets being part of the same union. Jinwoo watches proudly. Finally, he thinks, Iron isn't useless anymore. Then a soldier runs up to Jinwoo, tears streaming, babbling Japanese gratitude, bowing so deep his spine whines. Jinwoo does not understand a single syllable, but offers a thumbs up and compliments the brave warrior energy. He orders Jinho to continue evacuations while he stands before the giant corpse, ready for shadow extraction. Another monster unwillingly joins the Rizzi-Wu army, like an unwilling Pokemon. At Japan Hunter HQ, Chairman Matsumoto finally realizes Jinwoo truly might be the force Goto Ryuji warned him about. Reports say entire city sectors are being reclaimed. Matsumoto flashbacks to the conversation where Ryuji cautioned him to be wary of Sung Jinwoo, because this hunter wasn't like the others. He recalls when Jinwoo first arrived, and Matsumoto asked him politely, demanded politely, to defend Osaka with the rest of the hunters. Matsumoto assumed defending against 30 giants required a squad. Jinwoo calmly declined teamwork, essentially saying, "Nah, I'll solo it," and then he walked straight into hell like he was punching a time card. Later, Jinwoo continues expanding his shadow roster. He tries naming each new summon, but quickly gets bored and switches to numbers like they're disposable NPCs in a mobile RPG. Baru drops another corpse at his feet, like a puppy presenting a stick. Without even glancing, Jinwoo calls the new shadow number 6. He orders Jinho to take a break, reminding him politely that he is not equipped for main character duties. But although the shadows are dominating, Jinwoo can feel it. Things have been too easy. A chill creeps up. This is only Act 1. That cursed S-rank gate triggered multiple portals, and now low-tier mobs roam the streets. Evacuation and combat at the same time turns every rescue mission into chaos difficulty. 1 week later, Jinwoo and Jinho push through wreckage toward the main gate where the colossal giant general waits, unmoving. Like a final boss idle animation loop. Jinho glances around the destroyed landscape and mutters the obvious. Yeah, this whole place is cooked. Then suddenly, Hankawa appears, signaling the next phase of the nightmare. Just when everyone assumed she should have been 6 feet under, Hankawa somehow crawls back into the plot, alive and very much done with this nightmare arc. She reports like someone clocking overtime. Every hunter they sent earlier, gone. Either dead, dusted across the battlefield, or scattered somewhere screaming internally. Thanks to Rizzi-Wu's shadow squad, most giants are already wiped clean, and the leftovers are basically being farmed like XP mobs by other hunters and shadows working in literal harmony. Hearing that news, Rizzi-Wu knows the finale is queued up. Only one enemy remains, the last raid boss. He surveys the ruined city around him. Debris, corpses, structures collapsed like broken Lego builds, and he suddenly gets a deja vu flashback. This carnage looks eerily similar to Demon Castle. A slow realization creeps in. What if Demon Castle wasn't some random trial? What if the whole thing was a preview reel, a test simulation, a warning from the system? But the architect's dead. No prophetic visions have popped up since, and nothing has hinted at a second coming. So maybe that was the final form. Either way, Rizzi-Wu doesn't plan on letting this world turn into Demon Castle Part 2. He trained for this very scenario. Global annihilation denied. He turns to Hankawa and calmly tells her that since they've cleaned up almost everyone, and the last freak show is the only target left, he's ready to make his move. Hankawa looks at him confused and points out that backup hunters haven't even arrived yet. Rizzi-Wu gives her a confident smirk. They're here. Cut to another group. Muscle Mommy is still complaining like the world personally inconvenienced her, ranting about how annoying this raid is, while Minoru tries to convince her to chill because, hey, at least they're still alive. Hankawa, in peak exhausted mode, vents her frustration about how Jinwoo and his edgy army of shadows are wiping out giants the elites of Japan couldn't scratch. It feels humiliating, like they're just here to sweep up leftovers while someone else speedruns the whole raid. As she rants, an ominous wave of darkness sweeps the battlefield. The shadows start returning, every single one. Old recruits like Tusk, Igris, and Iron march in, alongside the fresh giant shadows and Jima, looking ready to unleash hell on command. Then the real diva himself appears, Baru. He kneels before Jinwoo like a loyal knight seeking approval. The Mana Farmer King praises him, and Baru bows like a kid who finally got his gold star. Jinwoo then orders Jinho to escort Hankawa away to safety. With the civilians out of the splash zone, Jinwoo begins the ritual. Shadow extraction on every fallen giant. More monstrous shadows rise, swelling the army. Once satisfied with his new roster, Jinwoo issues the final command. All shadow soldiers, charge the massive giant guarding the S-rank gate. While the army rushes into battle like a black tidal wave, Jinwoo watches from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The giant senses incoming death and responds with a massive mana pulse that cuts down shadows like tissue paper. Jinwoo pauses. Okay, that's new. This giant isn't just big, it's juiced with absurd magic output. One swing equals 100 shadow soldiers evaporating. Even Jinwoo feels the overwhelming pressure, admitting mentally that for a second, his instincts wanted to retreat. But he forces himself to stay. There are only two choices: flee like a coward, or erase the source of that pressure. Despite being surrounded, the giant doesn't panic. It swats shadows aside like flies, grabs fireballs bare-handed, grinding them out. When insect-type shadows pile onto its legs, the giant stomps without hesitation, turning them into mana dust. Baru prepares to intervene, but Jinwoo raises a hand. Not yet. Wait, he needs time to analyze the weakness. His shadows swarm endlessly, accomplishing nothing. Finally, he cracks the code. The giant's mana acts like armor coating its entire lower body, making physical damage useless below the neck. But when a fireball grazes its face, it flinches and instinctively protects itself. That's the weak spot, the face. Jinwoo summons Kaisel and unleashes Igris and Baru. Baru blitzes toward the head with insane speed, but the giant dodges. Meanwhile, riding atop Kaisel, Igris fires bolts of lightning from above. The giant avoids them narrowly, but Jinwoo confirms his theory. Its mana armor doesn't cover the head. Igris charges again, drawing the giant's attention just long enough for Jinwoo to dive in and slam an attack straight into the face. The giant roars in agony. Baru takes advantage and lunges again, forcing the giant to defend itself. Jinwoo reveals his trump card, a barrage of daggers propelled by ruler's authority. The blades hammer into its face repeatedly. From the sidelines, Jinho and Hankawa watch like spectators who didn't pay for tickets. Hankawa remarks, "This fight has turned into monsters versus monsters. Hunters don't even matter here." Jinwoo lands a vicious slash, obliterating one of the giant's eyes. As it screams, Baru dives straight into the empty socket, tearing it apart from the inside. Jinwoo keeps attacking externally while Baru shreds from within. The giant collapses, finally overwhelmed. A system notification appears. Enemy defeated. Jinwoo stands over the corpse, but his instincts scream something's wrong. The message confirms a kill, but there's no system alert for dungeon boss defeat, and the gate isn't collapsing. Jinho approaches like an excited fanboy, but Jinwoo's expression remains cold. Something is off. If the gate remains open, then the real boss is still alive. That was when things went sideways. The victory lap lasted about half a second before reality slapped Jinwoo in the face. He noticed something crucial. No black smoke rising from the corpse. No shadow meant no extraction, which meant raid not cleared. His stomach dropped. Something was wrong. He told Jinho to back up immediately, voice low and tense. He fixed his eyes on the giant's body just in time to see Baru crawl out of its mouth, like the worst horror movie prop imaginable. Even after death, mana still clung to the massive corpse, thick and suffocating. Baru's presence barely dented that pressure. Then the S-rank gate pulsed with blinding light, powering up like a reactor about to explode. Jinwoo felt it. This wasn't normal magic. The mana density twisted the air, sharp enough to cut skin. He saw Igris move instinctively, shielding Jinho, which made the whole situation even more alarming. Then things got weird. The gate began drawing in the giant's leftover magic like a vacuum cleaner on steroids. That kind of draining ability wasn't supposed to exist. Portals only spat monsters out. They didn't absorb energy back in. Blood trickled on Jinwoo's cheek. He had been sliced open just by standing near the mana pressure. That had never, ever happened before. He ordered Jinho to stay put. There were too many unknowns, and if someone was going to walk into that mystery tunnel, it was him. He stepped into the glowing light and emerged inside a massive hallway, architecture big enough to fit kaijus comfortably. Baru appeared by his side like a faithful nightmare companion and whispered if Jinwoo heard something. He had. A voice, distorted, resentful, dripping with hatred. Not just whispering, but rehearsing a villain monologue. Ahead sat an enormous giant, chained to the center of a chamber, rambling like an ancient prophet tweeting cryptic doom threads. When the creature finally noticed Jinwoo, it froze, confused, as though this was not the visitor it'd been expecting. Taking in the scene, Drippy Woo calmly demanded answers. Who bound him like this? The giant replied instantly. The rulers were responsible. They sealed him away, using him as leverage for an upcoming war. Drippy Woo remembered past attempts to interrogate monsters. Pointless efforts. None ever explained where they came from. But this giant was different, so he asked again what the giant knew of the rulers. The answer? The rulers and monarchs were two ancient factions beefing harder than toxic exes locked in eternal custody battles. And Drippy Woo was unintentionally stuck in the crossfire. When Drippy Woo asked if that made this giant a monarch, the creature confirmed it without hesitation. But the worst news followed. Both sides wanted Jinwoo either eliminated or worse. And currently, he lacked the influence to stand against them. Drippy Woo didn't believe a word. Chains made people say whatever helped them. He demanded proof. The monarch responded by chanting in a language that felt wrong, vibrating in the air. A system notification appeared. The King of Giants, Ligia, has activated Oath of Truth. Both parties were now bound to honesty. No lies allowed. Ligia begged again for freedom, promising assistance against future threats. Drippy Woo tried to fake trust and lie through his teeth, and the system shut him down. Literally prevented the words. Ligia smirked like someone who just won an argument they'd never let go of. Drippy Woo stared and demanded explanations. Why was Ligia talking like a normal person, while every other creature crawled out of gates, sounding like someone dropped them repeatedly as babies? Ligia asked who he meant. Drippy Woo clarified. The gate monsters. The ones screaming like broken NPCs with saliva issues. Ligia explained they weren't born stupid. The rulers tortured prisoners until their intellect shattered. Those creatures were the leftovers, empty shells forced into war. But he endured centuries in chains and kept his sanity. He was royalty, an imprisoned king, rotting while waiting for destiny. Drippy Woo pressed for intel about the winged knights in silver armor. Ligia identified them as the ruler's elite force. Then came the critical question. Why unleash monsters onto human cities? Ligia explained the truth. Humanity wasn't the target. They were props. Earth was being fattened with mana like livestock before slaughter. The rulers were slowly infusing magic into the world to strengthen it, preparing the planet as a battlefield. Magic stones? Cores? Everyone saw currency. The rulers saw fertilizer, energy farmed from human bloodshed to feed the Earth mana conditioning. Their long-term plan was simple. Turn Earth into the arena for monarchs versus rulers. Round 2. And the clock was ticking fast. Drippy Woo wasn't impressed. He'd already been a walking natural disaster. Another war didn't scare him. It just confirmed what he always suspected. He was being groomed for a role he never asked for. Then came the real twist, the kind that makes the whole story flip upside down. Ligia warned Drippy Woo that the moment either faction found out they'd spoken, the rulers and the monarchs would throw a cosmic tantrum and rush over like spoiled gods fighting over custody. The giant was basically waving a neon sign saying, "Congratulations, you just triggered World War lore." My glorious king demanded to know why this giant kept acting like the universe itself had beef with him. Ligia stared straight at him and dropped an even bigger bombshell. The power inside Drippy Woo did not originally belong to him. Someone willingly handed it over, betraying the rulers in the process. Meaning both factions had already marked Jinwoo for execution, like a glitched quest target. Yet even with chains digging into his flesh, Ligia promised undying loyalty, ride-or-die vibes after a single conversation. Drippy Woo narrowed his eyes and said what any rational player would. If you want to prove loyalty, stop narrating lore from your prison bunk and join the squad. Become a shadow soldier and put that mouth to actual use. That's when Ligia froze. His gaze shifted behind Jinwoo, and terror flooded his expression. For one heartbeat, he saw it, the real monarch of death towering behind Jinwoo, like the Reaper clocking into overtime. Ligia realized the truth. Jinwoo wasn't pretending to be king. The king was already standing in his shadow. Shaking, Ligia spilled more intel. Monarchs and rulers weren't like regular raid bosses. When they died, that was permanent. No resurrection, no do-over, no shadow recruitment. Ligia asked again if helping was enough to earn his life. Drippy Woo advanced, weapon loosening in his grip. He sensed something wrong but continued breaking the chains anyway. He casually tossed out a question, almost teasing, "You'll stick with me afterward, right?" Ligia swore he would, invoking those monarch oaths, which sounded about as reliable as terms and conditions nobody reads. But Drippy Woo didn't stop there. He asked the actual question that mattered. Are you on humanity's side? Silence. Not hesitant silence. Forced silence. The truth-binding oath was active, meaning Ligia physically couldn't speak a lie. That mute response was louder than a confession. Then Jinwoo saw it. A crystal jammed into Ligia's neck, an external control device, still feeding commands from the rulers like a magical remote collar. Ligia lunged, ready to bite the hand that was freeing him. Drippy Woo dodged effortlessly and stabbed him straight through the core, crushing the handshake emoticon before it could even load. Trust broken. Deal voided. Ligia fell, calling Jinwoo the true calamity. Honestly, a valid take. and tried one last desperate strike, but Jinwoo folded him again, cleaner and faster than speedrunning RNG bosses. With his health bar blinking red, Ligia hissed one final warning. War wasn't slowing down. More bloodshed, more chaos. The world would burn, and karma would torch everything Drippy Woo cared for. Drippy Woo silenced him with a finishing blow, cold, precise, absolute. A system notification chimed. You have defeated Ligia, one of the 9 original monarchs. The XP payout was monumental, enough to lag the UI for a moment, but no Shadow Soldier. Drippy Woo picked up a scrap of broken metal left behind and muttered that he'd take this useless junk as a souvenir. He emerged from the gate looking like he just uppercut a god and leveled to 122. Cut to the United States, helicopter lands. Director Brennan and Ms. Sellner show up at Christopher Reed's estate, one of America's heavyweight hunters. Chris stepped out, confused why a raid party landed on his lawn. Brennan told him to sit and listen. Then Sellner dropped a prophecy bomb, telling him someone was planning to assassinate him. Reed scoffed, flexing ego steroids. Nobody could take him. National-level hunter privilege. Said killing S-rank monsters was cardio. Sellner didn't flinch. She told him she dreamed of him surrounded by men. Not the good kind, and dying. That killed the smirk. Chris asked who could possibly protect him. Sellner answered calmly. There was only one man alive who slaughters monarchs like killstreak achievements. Jinwoo. Back in Japan, Drippy Woo exited the dungeon, thinking about how he'd just murdered the king of giants. Even chained and weakened, that presence had been suffocating. One mistake, and it would have been game over. News spread instantly. Giants across Japan? Gone. Wiped like browser history. Rumors exploded online about a new national-level hunter. Drippy Woo ignored the hype. Even the final giant running wild got clapped by China's strongest hunter, Liu Zhugong, who soloed it like a debt collector. Meanwhile, Japan's Hunter Association director Matsumoto realized his shady Jeju Island decisions were about to age terribly once the world learned the truth. The guilt landed. He walked into headquarters and turned himself in before history canceled him first. Across the Atlantic, things in the U.S. were suspiciously peaceful, way too cheerful for a world dealing with kaiju-sized dungeon problems. The hunters, who had just wrapped up an S-rank gate, were already swapping armor for tuxedos, hyped for a massive government-sponsored celebration. Uncle Sam basically said, "GG boys, here's a party budget the size of a national defense bill." Inside this fancy venue, the Scavenger Guild members were bragging about how absurdly expensive everything looked. And just when the vibes were peak comfort, their walking tank commander, Thomas Andre, bulldozed into the room radiating boss fight energy with casual violence in his smile. He scanned his guildmates like a predator, picking which dessert to eat first, and reminded them about their bet. Dude pointed at one hunter, who clearly wanted to respawn somewhere else, and demanded to know his wager. Man panicked, sweating bullets, saying he put nothing down. Thomas narrowed his eyes at his tie and said something like, "That tie looks awfully fine." In other words, payment identified. The guy probably regretted dressing up immediately. Guild mediator Laura stepped in, trying to cool the situation before Andre started collecting clothing tax. She eyed his own absurd outfit, the expensive tie strangled by the loudest Hawaiian shirt ever printed, and roasted him by saying the tie didn't match anything about him. Thomas accepted the L instantly, ditching the tie like it personally offended him. After securing fashion piece, Laura started briefing him on which guilds were attending the upcoming international conference. One of the names on the list made Thomas freeze mid-breath, the Ajin Guild from Korea. He asked for confirmation. Wasn't that the tiny new guild formed by Sung Jinwoo? Laura nodded. And just like that, Thomas perked up like someone told him his rival Jimbro was flying in for a rematch. The man suddenly looked motivated. Meanwhile, in Japan, our resident aura farmer/shadow emperor stood atop a battlefield that looked like a natural disaster had wiped the city clean. Jinwoo casually surveyed the fresh squad of giant shadow soldiers he'd yoinked from the dungeon. He muttered it was unfortunate that one escaped, but at least his shadow collection just upgraded from terrifying to government classified. The humans behind him stared like they'd just witnessed a walking apocalypse solo the raid. Jinho, though, had long surpassed shock. He just smiled proudly like, "Yep, that's my bro. Totally normal." A staff member approached Jinwoo and said someone wanted to talk to him. Jinwoo answered and got blindsided by a sudden emergency call. Yu Jinho's voice trembling on the other end. He said he was heading back to Korea immediately. Jinwoo asked what was going on, but Jinho couldn't explain. Just a gut-deep dread that something terrible happened. He heard his mother's voice shaking earlier, something she never did. As soon as Jinho landed, one of the Yu family assistants was already waiting with a private car like a cutscene NPC. The man insisted he'd explain everything once they got to the hospital. When they arrived, Jinho froze. His father, the iron-spined CEO who never showed weakness, was lying unconscious in a bed, completely motionless. Jinho tried to rush in, but the assistant stopped him, warning that an awakened hunter losing control could trigger an accident. He handed Jinho a notebook instead, something the chairman had been writing before collapsing. He said he'd been keeping it safe, waiting for the day the old man woke and asked for it, but now it belonged in Jinho's hands. Jinho opened it, and tears welled before he could process it. Inside were countless clippings, articles, reports, headlines, not only about Jinho's achievements, but ones featuring My Glorious King too. His father had kept everything like a scrapbook addict. Jinho smiled sadly, whispering that his dad still had that weird hobby of hoarding newspaper pieces. The assistant explained softly that it wasn't just recent stuff. There were clippings from Jinho's school competitions, concerts, even random business announcements. It wasn't that the chairman lacked love. His love was massive, just overwhelming and strict. They began walking toward the residence, but Jinho suddenly paused like his instincts pinged danger. He glanced back at the empty hallway, brows furrowed, but nothing was there. He brushed it off when the assistant asked if he was okay. The moment they turned the corner, the shadows behind them rippled. My Glorious King uncloaked, silently, standing there the whole time like Batman but scarier. He stepped toward the unconscious man and sighed. This hospital room was somehow hitting feelings harder than killing monarchs. He pulled out a potion bottle like a gamer prepping a revive. Outside, Jinho's sister, Jinwoo, arrived. She tried to contain herself, but something about the atmosphere felt heavy. She thought she glimpsed someone in the hall, but dismissed it as stress. When she entered the room, she froze. Her father, who doctors said might never wake, was sitting upright and staring at her. The girl's composure crumbled instantly, tears streaming. Doctors rushed in, confused and babbling medical disbelief. They said he had awakened from what should have been a permanent coma. No precedent, no explanation. Someone whispered that the media would flip when they heard. Outside, My Glorious King stood alone, whispering softly, "Happy birthday." He commented that Jinho came a bit early, then started planning his return to Japan. He tried using Shadow Exchange, but saw he still had nearly 2 hours of cooldown left. He wondered how to kill time, and then a thought popped up. Maybe go see Mommy Cha, just for a visit, obviously. Not suspicious at all. He shoved that impulsive thought of visiting Cha Hai-in straight into the trash bin and decided the safer, far healthier choice was mass dungeon homicide. When in doubt, slaughter monsters, not flirt. Meanwhile in America, Christopher Reed, Mr. National-level ego himself, was sleeping in his luxurious mansion like nothing bad ever happens to strong people. Then suddenly, he jolted awake, confused and tense. Something in the air felt off, like someone muted reality. The hallway was so silent it felt dead. To test it, he grabbed a wine glass and casually yeeted it across the room. The glass shattered, but bizarrely there was no sound. Not even a tiny tink. Yep, that was the sign. Something supernatural was messing with his sound settings in real life. He remembered Michael Connor's mysterious card and Selner's prophecy-level warning. If the vibes ever shift, call ASAP. Well, the vibes weren't just shifted. They were vaporized. Before he could process, a strange man materialized out of nowhere with other shadowy figures stacked behind him like a horror movie entourage. Christopher demanded answers, but the leader started speaking theatrically, claiming Reed would lose everything if he continued treating humans with mercy. He referred to Christopher as a fragment of light, like they were in some cosmic poetry slam. When Christopher tried to rebuttal, the intruder ignored him entirely and spoke towards some unseen higher entity connected to Reed instead. Basically saying, "I ain't talking to you. I'm talking to the divine Wi-Fi router you're linked to." That was the last straw. Christopher activated his spiritualization and transformed, promising one of them was dying tonight. No threats, just a scheduled murder appointment. The intruders recoiled in disbelief. A human pulled off spiritualization? That wasn't supposed to be on the skill tree. A brawl erupted instantly, violent and intense. Back in Japan, My Glorious King rode toward the airport like a celebrity farewell tour was happening. Streets filled with crowds, massive crowds, waves of people gathering just to witness the hunter who saved their nation. Estimations didn't matter. Everyone could tell there were easily over 100,000 people out there, cheering, crying, bowing. National hero treatment unlocked. Later, aboard the plane, Jinwoo tried enjoying the peace and airplane white noise. Then he noticed his seatmate, Agent Adam White. Jinwoo looked unimpressed, asking if this was really just coincidence or some government stalking arc. Adam calmly replied that he'd like to believe in coincidences, but even he knew that sounded stupid right now. He added that even though they'd only met once, the fact Jinwoo remembered his name was an honor. Baru whispered telepathically, already predicting Adam was about to mess everything up. He reminded Jinwoo the man's name was Adam, like Jinwoo could forget mid-sentence. My Glorious King mentally rolled his eyes and asked if negotiations weren't already canceled. Adam admitted his approach wasn't normal, but said he came with urgent news. Jinwoo immediately guessed the U.S. failed to stop the S-rank gate. Adam shook his head. Nope, that was handled. Then he pulled out footage, a house engulfed in flames that firefighters and elite hunters couldn't extinguish. The audio crackled. "This fire isn't natural, nothing's working." Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. "Okay, so what am I looking at?" Adam sighed and delivered the bomb. Christopher Reed caused the fire, and despite sending 1,800 firefighters and 14 elite hunters, it still wasn't contained. Jinwoo, now serious, asked if Reed lost a fight. Adam confirmed, shockingly, Christopher Reed was already dead. He passed Jinwoo a photo of the assumed killer, and instantly Jinwoo snapped. Adam lifted into the air, crushed by Jinwoo's invisible grip. The cabin froze as Jinwoo growled, voice heavy with threat. "You think this is a joke? You think you're walking out after dropping that on me? Adam motioned to stop the armed agents from attacking, desperate to finish before he died. He explained the man in the photo had crawled out of a dungeon, meaning they weren't certain he was human. His aura felt monstrous. He'd also assaulted an S rank during interrogation. Oh, and he was connected to the Hunter Bureau explosion a few months back. Jinwoo released Adam, letting him crash like dropped luggage, glaring while asking if they suspected the case was tied to his father. Adam wheezed for breath but continued. The suspect had taken down multiple hunters and vanished without leaving the slightest footprint. Every attempt to track him failed. The Bureau believed this man was an extraordinary threat. Jinwoo finally demanded why Adam was dumping this now. Adam explained the plan for the upcoming International Guild Conference. Guilds from around the world gathering. The U.S. wanted to publicly release wanted posters of the suspect and expose the case globally. They arranged the briefing specifically to avoid traumatizing My Glorious King later by having his dad's wanted poster casually plastered across a stadium-sized screen. The thought hit like a truck. A decade vanished without explanation, and now the possibility existed that his father had returned, not as family, not even as human, but as a creature born from a dungeon. His gut twisted into knots. One nearby hunter crouched beside Adam, who was still struggling to remember how lungs worked. Adam insisted he was fine, though his gaze stayed glued to Jinwoo, equal parts awe, fear, and "I almost died." That telekinetic flex wasn't just a warning, it confirmed the terrifying truth. Jinwoo had climbed into the echelon of national-level hunters, only the sixth ever to exist. Whether the Hunter Bureau wanted to accept it or pretend it didn't happen, Adam already knew he'd have to inform his higher-ups immediately. National-level hunters were geopolitical weapons, after all. After Adam detonated that emotional nuke, Mr. Aura Farmer sat on the plane in uncomfortable silence. His mind spiraled. His father, who disappeared like he went to the store for milk and never came back, was possibly alive, and might be a monster wearing what used to be his face. The revelation rattled Jinwoo to his core. He stared blankly ahead, forcing himself not to rip open a portal mid-flight out of raw panic and rage. 10 years of silence suddenly felt heavier than the cabin pressure. A few days passed. The official list of guilds chosen for the International Guild Conference dropped, including Korea's Ajin Guild. The Korean Hunters Association held a press announcement confirming the selection. Over on Microphone Corner, journalists swarmed Choi Jong-in, asking how he felt considering his own guild used to represent Korea at the conference for years. Choi shrugged like he'd been waiting for the question. He said this time, America finally made a competent decision, choosing Jinwoo instead. Even he acknowledged Jinwoo as the strongest. After all, soloing Jeju and vaporizing the giants in Japan wasn't subtle resume material. When asked whether he was salty about losing his annual trip to America, Choi calmly replied he could survive without flying thousands of miles to drink coffee flavored like burnt sadness, while fake smiling at politicians. As he headed toward his car, mind wandering toward snacks and convenience store ramen, one of his subordinates hurried over with intel. The Hunters Guild secured an A-rank gate in Suseodong. Choi asked if Ajin tried to contest it. The response, nope. Ajin had gone quiet, and Jinwoo being quiet was suspicious, because silence was not his brand. Meanwhile, at the Korean Hunters Association headquarters, Jin Chul delivered a full briefing to Chairman Go-Gun-Hee. He reported that China had begun requesting information on My Glorious King. Since they weren't asking for restricted files or personal details, legally, the association couldn't outright refuse. Gun-Hee narrowed his eyes, questioning why China suddenly cared now, especially when Jinwoo had already rejected the idea of switching nations. Jin Chul explained the request wasn't governmental. It came directly from Liu Zhigang, a Chinese 7-star hunter, the same guy who intercepted a giant that swam across the ocean like a kaiju marathon runner. Now he wanted intel on the hunter who obliterated thousands of giants like daily cardio. Gun-Hee exhaled sharply and ordered Jin Chul to respond with polite fluff while locking away the real files. Back in the U.S., Thomas Andre received notification that My Glorious King would arrive the following day. Laura delivered the message, and right on cue, Hwang Dong-soo strutted in radiating entitlement. Without hesitation, Thomas stared him down and warned him, "Keep your filthy hands away from Jinwoo." Unless he wanted those same hands relocated permanently. Hwang bristled, chest puffed, like he thought intimidation was an option. Thomas leaned back and asked who told him he was allowed to speak. Laura silently judged everything, but wisely held her tongue. Only a handful of humans alive could threaten someone like Hwang without ending up a stain on the carpet. And Thomas was absolutely one of them. Despite the warning, Thomas knew Dong-soo's arrogance wouldn't vanish. So he repeated the command. Under no circumstance was he allowed to approach My Glorious King. He suggested Dong-soo go sip overpriced coconut water at the resort and leave global hunter politics to grown-ups. As Hwang stormed off with his fragile ego barely intact, Laura leaned in and whispered, if letting him roam free was really smart. Thomas smirked and admitted Dong-soo wouldn't stop so easily. He instructed her to keep surveillance on him until Jinwoo left the country. Laura wondered aloud whether Huang would even bother listening. Thomas replied that if the man valued breathing, then yes, he'd listen real carefully. Meanwhile, the International Guild Conference was underway, and America looked like someone spilled hunters, press, and pure ego all over the streets. The place was overflowing with reporters and S-ranks, each convinced they were the main character. Two hunters from Germany's Richter Guild, Leonard Nierman and his vice master, made their way toward the venue. Leonard surveyed the chaos and asked why the media seemed rabid this time around. His vice master casually pointed toward a particular arrival and said the press was here for him. That's when they saw the legend, my glorious King Jinwoo, walking in with Jinho and Chief Wu, following behind like some VIP entourage. Hearing crowds showering praise, Leonard thought maybe it'd be good networking to introduce himself. But as he stepped closer, he froze mid-stride. His brain blue-screened. The vice master asked what malfunctioned. Leonard shakily pointed at Jinwoo's shadow and whispered, "Don't you see them?" He had previously witnessed my glorious king's ability, but the idea that Jinwoo didn't summon his shadow, he kept them inside his shadow constantly, left him speechless. He muttered that if someone claimed this man showed up ready to spark a war with America, he'd believe it without a second thought. Jinwoo noticed Leonard staring like he'd seen a ghost glitch out of a video game and asked Jinho who the guy was. Jinho shrugged, saying that after all the recent screen time, it was probably just another fanboy waiting for an autograph. Then he turned to Jin Chul and asked why he was tagging along. Jin Chul stared at him, spiritually exhausted, and explained he'd been assigned to protect Mr. Aura Farmer. Jinho leaned in, making sure he heard correctly. Jin Chul repeated it, dead inside. Protecting Mr. Aura Farmer. Even he looked embarrassed by the title. While the supporting cast continued being unintentionally comedic, my glorious king looked forward and noticed someone approaching. Adam materialized and said they'd been expecting them. Mr. Aura Farmer asked why Adam was even on U.S. soil when his original assignment was Asia. Adam said that used to be true, but now he held a full-time position dealing exclusively with matters concerning my glorious king. That job description alone probably justified a pay raise. Adam informed the group that staff would escort everyone else to their rooms, but Mr. Aura Farmer had to accompany him separately. Jinwoo instructed Jinho to go with Jin Chul and followed Adam. After a short walk, Jinwoo asked if this was going to be about his father. Remembering the trauma the topic caused last time, Adam chose his words carefully, swearing it wasn't anything dangerous and that the Bureau currently held Mr. Aura Farmer in extremely high regard. And honestly, he wasn't exaggerating. It now felt illegal to even inhale too loudly when Jinwoo was around. Inside the car, Jinwoo asked where they were heading. Adam replied they were going to the Bureau headquarters. He explained that ever since Christopher Reed got obliterated, the higher-ups were panicking. They were preparing to dump every resource into recruiting a new national-level hunter. Jinwoo asked if he was among the candidates. Adam nodded and pulled out photos, one showing the skeletal remains of the dragon Kamesh, another showing the runestone extracted from the corpse. Adam explained that the stronger the monster, the scarier the runestone. The Kamesh raid traumatized humanity on a global scale. The Bureau managed to extract a runestone from its corpse and were looking for someone worthy to use it. Adam asked what Jinwoo thought of the offer. Instead of reacting, Jinwoo calmly asked him to go back to the previous photo. He wanted another look at the corpse. He asked if the body had been preserved. Adam confirmed it. Jinwoo simply said, "Take me there." Adam blinked and asked why. Jinwoo guilt-tripped him, saying he'd cooperated with the Bureau plenty, so this request shouldn't be much trouble. Adam admitted he didn't know the exact storage location, but said that if Jinwoo was the one asking, the paperwork would basically approve itself. He asked for a few minutes to file a formal request. Jinwoo responded that if they were waiting, they'd wait together. He wasn't letting Adam out of sight. Back at the Bureau, Director David Brennan was spiraling into panic mode. He asked Adam to confirm whether Mr. Aura Farmer was in the building. Adam confirmed and added that the runestone offer came up briefly and then died instantly. David freaked out, wondering if the man seriously only cared about the corpse and not the priceless runestone. Deputy Director Michael tried using logic before the director had a stroke. He explained that abilities are priceless. Hunters spend more than the cost of a house for decent runestones. So maybe Jinwoo saw greater value in the corpse itself. Then a horrifying realization hit. David asked the real question. Was Jinwoo's power limited only to monsters he personally killed? Michael froze. His brain connected the terrifying possibility. What if Jinwoo didn't need to kill the target first? What if he could make anything dead into a shadow, as long as it was intact? If that was true, then my glorious king might be planning to turn the Kamesh dragon into yet another one of his shadow soldiers. David stared into existential dread and whispered that no one should be allowed to wield that kind of power. Michael, staying calm despite David hyperventilating like a malfunctioning smoke alarm, reminded him of the reality check. Refusing my glorious king wasn't just risky, it was practically begging for geopolitical collapse. One wrong blink from that man and headlines would read World War begins because someone said no. So the Bureau basically had two options. Option A, let him resurrect a god-tier dragon corpse. Option B, suffer the consequences of telling him no, and probably lose half the country. After internally wrestling with the decision like a man trapped in a chess match against himself, David finally chose a path. He would personally escort my glorious king underground to the classified monster morgue, where they stashed dead kaiju like trophies. The elevator ride was peak awkward. David tried to lighten the mood, maybe bond a little, but Jinwoo stood motionless, staring into the void like he was mentally uninstalling America. When the doors slid open and they entered the containment site, Jinwoo's eyes immediately locked onto the residual mana leaking from somewhere below. He could feel the remains calling out like a beacon. He pondered how wild this aura felt, even though the beast had been rotting for 8 years in a different dimension. If this monster were to join his ever-growing shadow army, difficulty settings in life would vanish completely. Humanity could kiss balance goodbye. They soon stood before the giant reptile skeleton. David dropped lore like a documentary narrator. Kamesh didn't die easy. It took 5 national-level hunters to put him down. And even then, he caused catastrophic damage first. Now the Bureau's entire energy infrastructure relied on whatever mystical juice was still trapped inside his bones. David wrapped up with a smug, satisfied now expression, like he'd just given a guided tour of his prized aquarium, but my glorious king stepped forward without acknowledging the theatrics. He instructed the side characters to move back, and David echoed it for everyone else. The first shadow extraction attempt fizzled, but attempt number 2, that one blew the roof metaphorically and almost literally. The environment went haywire, smoke surged, bones lifted like puppets possessed, and the remains twisted together, recreating the Calamity Dragon himself. The building trembled, reinforced glass shattered, alarms screamed, and David's voice cracked mid-sentence as he shrieked warnings about breath attacks and imminent cremation. Then, Kamesh locked eyes with his new king. My glorious king simply commanded him to calm down. Instant tone shift. The dragon dropped the aggression instantly, like a switch flipped from apocalypse engine to oversized obedient pet. The staff watched in stunned confusion as Kamesh bowed, practically wagging his bony metaphorical tail. Kamesh proclaimed that he once served a dragon monarch and now pledged loyalty to the new sovereign. Jinwoo analyzed the creature, realizing that Kamesh held rage hotter than magma, yet also enough discipline to become an invaluable shadow. This wasn't just another summon. This monster had individuality and terrifying potential. As he processed it, puzzle pieces from the system aligned. Monarch of Destruction, Monarch of Giants, Monarch of the Beginning. The villains weren't random. They were part of a larger hierarchy, and he'd been positioned at the center of it for a long time. Before he could fully unravel the implications, Kamesh's physical form began deteriorating. The dragon apologized, saying this reunion came far too late, and now his time was up. Jinwoo stood still, silent, watching his new soldier collapse. He called out to the system desperately, trying to halt the decay, but the system coldly rejected him. Kamesh shared his final regret, envying the other shadows who would remain alongside their king forever. Then he issued a warning. Humans wielding powers loaned by the rulers could not be trusted. With that, the colossal frame crumbled. Bones scattered across the floor. My glorious king muttered to Adam that he'd handle the damages and casually walked off. Then rage punched through, and he slammed the metal door hard enough to make everyone nearby jump like NPCs reacting to an explosion. Later, Jinchul approached him, frantic, asking where he had disappeared. Jinwoo casually replied that he had been somewhere without signal. Jinchul asked if Jinho had met him already. Jinwoo responded blankly. What meeting? Jinchul explained. Someone claiming to represent my glorious king picked Jinho up for a scheduled meet at the bureau. Jinwoo hadn't sent anyone. Now paranoia crawled up his spine. Adam checked visitor logs. No entry for Jinho existed. Jinchul looked like his soul evaporated. He said a hunter from the scavenger guild collected Jinho 2 hours ago. Adam snapped into crisis mode instantly. Scavenger headquarters stood just blocks away, but they did not have jurisdiction to make moves like this. Adam phoned Laura, and she instantly sensed trouble. She asked if Jinwoo knew. Adam said Jinchul mentioned it. Laura said they'd look into it. But when Adam turned around, Jinwoo was gone. He disappeared faster than a dad who swears he's just going to buy milk. Cut to my glorious king perched somewhere high, shadows sweeping the city like a surveillance network. He realized he made a critical misplay. He hadn't planted a shadow on Jinho back at the hospital when he saved that old man. Now that same ominous instinct he once felt with his sister crawled back. He summoned every shadow soldier, and scattered them across the city to track Jinho down. Elsewhere, Thomas Andre stormed around demanding to find Hwang Dong-soo, radiating murderous intent. Inside a dim warehouse, Dong-soo stood over a brutalized Jinho, barely clinging to consciousness. Back on the rooftops, my glorious king strained to hear any whispers, scanning every direction, desperate to locate anything that would lead him to Jinho before it was too late. My glorious king scanned every street, every rooftop, every inch of the skyline like a walking natural disaster. But his shadows brought back nothing. That could only mean one thing. Jinho wasn't in the city anymore, and if the kid had been moved without a fight, it wasn't by some random group of weaklings. Regular civilians don't overpower a hunter, not even a D rank. Only one conclusion fit. A hunter had taken him. Jinho might have been labeled D rank on paper, but he wasn't dying as a background NPC in a filler episode. Then it hit Jinwoo, the Scavenger Guild. And where there's Scavenger Guild, there's Hwang Dong-soo, the bitter little brother who'd been simmering in the shadows like a grudge-aged villain. Now, with Drippy Woo setting foot on American soil, Hwang's patience had expired. He wanted answers, or revenge. Jinwoo clenched his jaw, muttering under his breath, if anything happens to Jinho, well, everyone already knew what came next when the murder aura kicked in. Meanwhile, back at Scavenger HQ, Thomas Andre was getting updates that made his blood pressure spike. Hwang had gone ghost, full-on vanishing act. Thomas shook his head, wondering how a clown like that could be so bold unless he was counting on Thomas to clean up his mess. He called Laura, mentally kicking himself for letting his hunters run wild like unsupervised middle schoolers. Laura's report sent chills down everyone's spine. With help from the Hunter Bureau, they tracked 3 suspicious detours in Hwang's path. Thomas didn't hesitate. He ordered the whole squad deployed and said he'd personally go in. When he asked how Laura got the Bureau to cooperate, she dropped the bomb. There was a potential deathmatch brewing between America's #1 hunter and Korea's living cheat code. The Bureau agents were collectively losing their minds. Reports came in that the Scavenger Guild had canceled all ongoing raids and mobilized every member. David Brennan's brain almost short-circuited. If all the S ranks were moving, Thomas was definitely involved. And if Thomas was involved, this wasn't just drama. It was an international incident waiting to happen. Cut to the abandoned factory where Hwang Dong-soo was still running his villain arc. Jinho was chained, bloodied, and barely conscious, but somehow still alive. Hwang kept insisting he wanted the truth, even as his hands conveyed a more aggressive agenda. He told Jinho that near-death recovery was part of the fun, a twisted cycle he seemed determined to maintain. Then, as if the universe needed to drop one more weight, Jinho, barely holding himself up, gave Hwang a full middle finger. No words, no dialogue, just the single most defiant act of the arc. That small gesture alone cracked Hwang's composure. He snapped, hurling Jinho into concrete with bone-rattling force and declaring the fun had only just begun. One of Hwang's goons noticed a silent figure lurking in the shadows. Hwang squinted, immediately assuming it was some orc from a dungeon break. He readied himself, flipping his jacket like he was about to throw hands with a generic NPC. He had no idea he was about to face a shadow soldier. Back in Korea, peace was pretending to exist. Drippy Woo's mother sipped her tea, watching the news, blissfully unaware she'd birthed a literal walking genocide button. Baru lingered nearby, respecting the space, but thinking to himself, if there's anything my king can't survive, the planet might as well uninstall itself. Then, the broadcast hit. My glorious king had touched down in America. Baru immediately felt it. The shift in the air, the palpable pressure. His internal prayer was simple. Anyone on the wrong side of this king's wrath was about to meet their end. Across the states, Scavenger Guild convoys tore through city streets. Thomas Andre in the lead car sensed it too. That aura, that murderous presence. He told the driver to stop with the commentary. It had already begun. He kicked open the door and ordered the others to catch up. One of the men muttered under his breath, guests were filing another round of insurance claims. Meanwhile, in the torture basement, Hwang's ribs just got sent to another dimension. Drippy Woo arrived in true fashion, Shadow Exchange flipping him across the map like a boss-level teleport. He punched Hwang so hard the factory itself might need therapy. Jinho looked up through broken ribs, battered beyond belief, and smiled. Salvation had arrived. Drippy Woo sprinted to his side, reaching for a potion, but the bastards had done a number on him. That potion wasn't going to cut it. He glared at the first goon and asked flatly, "Are you a healer?" Of course, the first man didn't speak Korean. Q Hwang, crawling back from the hole Jinwoo had sent him flying through seconds earlier, translating. Drippy Woo's glare didn't waver. "Heal him." The goon, terrified, said he had to ask his superior first. Jinwoo repeated the command. The man hesitated, face-palmed himself, and reluctantly replied, "Fine, your shadow will do the healing." The second goon panicked. And that panic? Oh, it was exactly the kind of chaos my glorious king thrived on. He looked at Hwang and muttered, this wasn't part of the job description, But he didn't care. He followed his instinct and slammed Huang into the floor so hard that the concrete groaned in protest. Huang, somehow still cocky, stepped forward, demanding answers about his brother's death. Jinho, barely conscious, weakly warned him to be careful. Drippy Woo cut him off, growling, "Don't speak in your condition." Then came the moment. Huang, dripping rage and delusion, spat out the question. Had Drippy Woo killed his brother and the other hunters? Jinwoo didn't even flinch. He delivered the coldest line in Manhwa history. "Go ask your brother yourself." No yelling, no flair, just truth wrapped in absolute indifference. Huang snapped and charged, but he was a lifetime too slow. Drippy Woo sidestepped, countered, and sent him flying again. Before he could even land properly, Huang looked up and saw Drippy Woo already planted next to him. Another swing, another fold. Jinwoo grabbed Huang by the head, smashing him into the pavement like he was trying to delete him from existence. And then Thomas Andre arrived. He stood there, calm but furious, ordering Jinwoo to stop. Turning to Huang, Thomas barked a warning. "I told you not to mess with him." Then he turned to Jinwoo. "Is he still breathing?" Jinwoo met his gaze coldly. "Not done yet." Thomas clenched his jaw. One last warning. Let Huang go, and he'd pretend none of this happened. Jinwoo's calm reply. "And if I say no?" Thomas froze. Then he said the words that meant war. "Then it's not a request anymore." Without hesitation, Jinwoo yeeted Huang into the sky. The man flailed, praying silently for Thomas to intervene, for someone to save his pride. Jinwoo turned his attention fully to Thomas. The main event had arrived. Thomas tried the classic ego play. "You don't know who you're talking to." Jinwoo cut him off cold. "Doesn't matter." Deep down, Thomas knew he was staring at a man who understood exactly who he was and didn't care. Flashback. Thomas's villain origin. Born into a poor immigrant family, raised on scraps, but with hands that could turn fists into currency. Power, wealth, respect, earned through violence. He became CEO of punching people into submission, thinking he was king material, until he ran into my glorious king. Back in the present, his scavenger guild showed up, hoping to back him up. But before they could blink, Thomas himself got launched like a ragdoll across the block. Dust settled. Thomas rose, bruised, silent, signaling them to stay back. He strode toward Jinwoo with purpose, shadowed by rage and pride. His squad panicked and scrambled behind him, fully aware they were about to witness carnage. Meanwhile, Drippy Woo casually ordered a shadow operative. "Get Jinho to the hospital. Use anything. No hesitation." Then came the fun part. Jinwoo turned to Thomas and the rest of the scavenger guild and revealed the real threat. His shadow army, an entire battlefield's worth of monsters lined up and ready to annihilate. Thomas grinned, a mix of madness and exhilaration. Finally, a fight worthy of him. Deep down, though, he knew it was already chaos in the trash. All he wanted was to reclaim his ego by beating Jinwoo. He tried one last bluff. "Back off and apologize." Jinwoo didn't flinch. He flipped him off, unmoved by the devastation unfolding around them. That broke Thomas. He roared, transforming with sheer force, promising regret, but Jinwoo didn't budge. He commanded his shadows to charge. Thomas yelled for his people to get in the way. The battlefield erupted. Tanks tried to erect barriers with flashy skills, only to watch them crumble like paper. Shadows smashed forward, chaos reigning supreme. Thomas, in a last-ditch effort, wiped out an entire squad by himself. He looked up and saw Tusk casting protection, trying to block him. Thomas bulldozed straight through the magic shield, smashing Tusk square in the face. He moved through the carnage, thinking of his surviving guild members. None would make it if he didn't intervene personally. He reached the center and saw it. My glorious king, mid-fight, handling chaos like side quests, utterly untouchable. Thomas lunged forward like a man who clearly had no concept of personal space or survival instincts. But alas, iron decided to politely insert itself between them. Thomas bellowed, swinging a fist that slammed Jinwoo into the floor so hard even the concrete groaned, probably filing a formal complaint. Before Thomas could savor the moment, Jinwoo blinked, because of course he did. And bam. Suddenly, he was right in Thomas's personal bubble, the one where all bad ideas live. Jinwoo whipped out a dagger and slashed like a villain in a budget movie, except nothing happened. Yup, zero damage. Thomas, feeling rather smug for a moment, proceeded to punch Jinwoo with all the self-assuredness of someone who clearly believed physics was negotiable. Jinwoo got tossed like a disposable side character in a chaotic RPG cutscene, while Thomas smugly narrated the entire flight, explaining, "Feel the difference, pleb. This is the raw power of a national-level hunter." Jinwoo was so done. Mid-flight, he casually activated Ruler's authority like flicking a light switch. Thomas froze mid-motion. Not a twitch, not a blink. Completely locked in place. Realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Apparently being a national-level hunter doesn't mean jack when your opponent's literally bending reality for fun. Jinwoo stepped forward and delivered a single strike so devastating it made Thomas cough up blood like a fountain. He collapsed to the floor, but naturally forced himself upright because drama. Jinwoo didn't stop. He charged, raining strikes and side comments like an infuriatingly polite hurricane. Strength, despair, obedience, you're welcome. Thomas tried to block, But the combo was cleaner than a Michelin-starred kitchen, leaving him shouting in frustration while activating his reinforcement skill like, "This should help." Spoiler, it did not. Meanwhile, the Hunter Bureau decided, in their infinite wisdom, that rolling up to this apocalypse might be a good idea. Adam White, calmly riding in a car, got bombarded with the all-important question: what the hell is happening? His only response? No time for that. Maybe try surviving instead. Another agent added, if we get any closer, it's an instant Darwin Award. Yup, the city was officially a live-action disaster movie, and my glorious king was farming bodies like it was Monday morning chores. Back at the factory, Thomas had fully embraced his inner rage monster. Charging like a bull on energy drinks, he slammed the ground with enough force to give nearby tectonic plates existential dread. Jinwoo barely dodged the shockwave, thinking, yep, normal Tuesday. Thomas wasn't done. He unleashed a black hole-level skill, swallowing everything, including Jinwoo's shadows. Jinwoo squinted. Without ruler power, he'd have been shredded like a cheap printer document. Suddenly, boom, massive explosion. Half the building screamed in pain. Jinwoo, utterly unfazed, shrugged, mentally adding, minor inconvenience Tuesday. Thomas, fueled by ego and pure bad decisions, launched at him like a bullet with delusions of grandeur. Midair, Jinwoo stomped on his face and used the momentum to send him crashing. Telekinesis tried to cheat physics, but ruler's authority yanked Thomas back faster than a bungee cord. Thomas growled, fine, let's go head on. Their fists collided. Shockwaves ripped through the factory like reality itself was filing a restraining order. Thomas's face paled as Jinwoo casually shattered his armor, giving him the kind of disappointed stare that makes you reconsider all your life choices. He hit the ground, hard. Thomas rose, rage-consuming logic like it was a snack. He threw another punch. Jinwoo dodged effortlessly and delivered a knee to Thomas's face that cracked more armor than a rogue demolition crew. Agents arrived. One warning Adam White, stay back. You're going to be collateral if you're not careful. What's that? White squinted. That, my friend, is Thomas Andre, replied the agent, staring at the carnage. Thomas, lying in dirt, had an existential meltdown. How is he a mage type? How is he doing this? He screamed, pulling whatever energy he had left. I cannot lose. Jinwoo, already 3 steps ahead, tore off his faceplate, looked him dead in the eyes and said, I told you, doesn't matter who you are. Thomas roared, I am Thomas Andre. You think this is enough to beat me? Hit after hit, armor broken, bones mostly, ego obliterated, dignity. Don't be cute. By the time Jinwoo paused, Thomas was nothing more than a very unhappy pile of bruised regrets. Thinking that things might get messy, Agent Adam White threw himself at the idea of stopping Drippy Woo. He begged, pleaded, whispered sweet nothings, basically did everything short of writing him a haiku about restraint. But Drippy Woo? Oh no, not in the mood. The man had zero chill. Thomas, lying there broken, bloody, and dramatically regretting every life choice that led him here, finally croaked out the one word every fighter hates: defeat. Drippy Woo paused, towering over the aftermath like a king inspecting a playground of rubble, and just stared at what was once the world's strongest hunter. Adam blinked and blinked again, and then thought, how many hunters could actually do this to Thomas Andre? Answer, none. Absolutely zero. Maybe a god, but nope, just my glorious king. He shuddered at the thought of word getting out. Whole world? Probably explode. He promptly ordered every hunter on site to treat Thomas like he wasn't the poster child for don't mess with Jinwoo. One panicked hunter reported, every bone in his body? Shattered. Blood loss? Off the charts? Solo? Impossible. Need backup. They also noted the miraculous part. Nobody else died. Because apparently the universe has a sick sense of humor, but some limits. Adam nodded. Well, could have been worse, he muttered. The understatement of the century. But just as calm settled like an unwanted fog, an agent screamed something that froze everyone mid-step. They rushed over and found the lifeless body of Dong-Soo. Yep, apparently death likes to RSVP uninvited. And Drippy Woo? Gone. Poof. Ghost mode. Classic. Back in Korea, my glorious king was perched atop a building, looking like a bored deity who just got done with a cosmic sandbox session in America. After Thomas folded like a cheap lawn chair, Jinwoo had used Shadow Switch to dip out of the U.S., swapping places with Peru. Peru, loyal as a golden retriever on caffeine, was already at the hospital patching up Jinho. Then a new shadow appeared, kneeling in all the melodramatic glory only a fully sentient shadow can muster. It was none other than the greedy little clown, Dong-Soo. Jinwoo squinted at him and quipped, you died chasing things you could never handle. From now on, your name is Greed. Then he told him to kiss the ground like a penitent NPC. Did Greed flinch? Nope, not even a twitch. Talk about commitment to bad decisions. The very next day, my glorious king arrived at the International Guild Conference in the U.S. Reporters swarmed like mosquitoes on steroids. He side-eyed Adam and asked why everyone suddenly cared about his arrival. Adam, with that calm while panicking tone only a seasoned agent can muster, said, "Media probably caught wind that you curb-stomped Thomas Andre." Yeah, subtlety was never on Jinwoo's agenda. He walked in with one mission: ask questions, get answers, and then ghost the place like a polite hurricane. Every guild leader worth their ego was packed into the room, and as soon as he entered, every eye in the building turned his way. Whispers exploded faster than firecrackers. That's the man who beat Thomas Andre within an inch of his life and saved Tokyo while doing it. The presentation kicked off. A frazzled scientist waddled onto the stage, presumably powered by sheer panic and zero caffeine. Dr. Belzer started explaining how gates were going haywire, tossing around phrases like magic storm forming over 9 points worldwide. Spoiler, Seoul was at the top of the list. Every head immediately pivoted toward Jinwoo, like he personally signed the apocalypse invitation. Dr. Belzer tried to calm them. If my glorious king had this much power, he'd already be beyond hunters. Jinwoo stayed silent, but in his head, he was already piecing together the 9 hotspots, rulers, and monarchs, like a walking conspiracy chart. Dr. Belzer wrapped up deadpan, saying, "No clue what's causing it. No idea how to stop it. World might be toast. Good luck." Then director David Brennan, looking like someone about to announce the obituary of humanity, stepped up. Flat, emotionless, he confirmed, Christopher Reed, one of the top national hunters, had been assassinated 2 weeks ago. No one knew who, and if the conference attendees weren't panicking already, this news guaranteed chaos. David played a video. Hunters went stone still. Christopher Reed, human apex predator, reduced to dust in the blink of an eye. Brain short-circuiting? Check. They tried rationalizing. National-level hunters? Untouchable. Until now. A few brave souls whispered the obvious. Wasn't this the guy who curb-stomped Thomas Andre yesterday? In the eye of the storm stood Mr. Aura Farmer, quiet as always, aura radiating, "Do not mess with me." While the room spun into full paranoia mode, David dropped the bomb. The bureau had a suspect. Codename, Suspect S. A photo hit the big screen. Chaos ensued. The guy looked exactly like my glorious king. Energy in the room shifted from shock to confusion, faster than a caffeinated squirrel on roller skates. And of course, someone had to say the dumbest thing possible. "Ah, Asians all look the same, right? Perfect. Someone always has to." Jinwoo's face remained stoic. Aura? Not so much. He internally battled the rising rage, mentally reviewing rulers, dungeons, and that giant lizard Kamish, lecturing him about monarchs and rulers. David continued, giving the official briefing. The man had been found in an American gate, spoke fluent Korean, and got interrogated by Hwang Dong-soo. Escalation? Naturally. Result? Furniture-level destruction. And apparently that same man might have deleted Christopher Reed too. The footage plays, and boom, clear as day, Sung Il-hwan looking Dong-soo dead in the face, basically telling him, "Step foot in Korea and you're done." Greed catches the clip too, and immediately confirms, "Yep, that's definitely Father Drippy himself." David continues the briefing, explaining they want guilds across the entire globe mobilized to hunt this mysterious figure. Someone nervously asks if the target is even human anymore, and the Bureau replies his mana level is so insane, it matches a monster's signature. Another hunter asks if this person used to be a hunter who disappeared into a gate, and David nods. Yep, that's exactly the case. So why was this guy's identity kept secret? Because he's related to someone who is currently sitting right here. The silence gets so heavy you could slice it. Every head slowly turns toward one particular man. China's 7-star powerhouse, Liu Zhigang, wastes 0 seconds. He demands clarification, asking how this beast is connected to the king of auras. David exhales because he knew this moment was coming, and finally reveals the suspect called himself the father of the glorious king. Liu swivels toward the king and asks the obvious question, "What will you do if hunters come after him?" Jinwoo doesn't flinch. He answers like he rehearsed it. If that man is a monster, he'll put him down. But if that man truly is his father, and anyone dares to lay a hand on him, he'll personally wipe out every last hunter on Earth. He states loudly he'll protect his family even if the whole world turns against him. Later, Adam White catches up to him outside and asks if he meant that statement. Jinwoo simply replies with a cold yes, wasting 0 breath. Adam smirks and says only one other mad lad would threaten the entire hunter community publicly like that. Jinwoo asks who. Adam gestures. Thomas Andre. Poor guy's still recovering in a hospital bed because even titans need a timeout after running into the king. Adam informs Jinwoo that the Hunter Bureau is hosting a fancy feast and invites him. Before the king even declines, Liu Zhigang rolls up with his squad speaking Mandarin. Jinwoo stands there like someone accidentally opened a foreign language audio track, while Adam translates. Liu explains he battled some gigantic sea monster offshore, the same creature Jinwoo previously spared. He admits the fight was brutal thanks to that watery battlefield, and confesses he's been eager to meet the hunter who treats world-ending monsters like morning exercise. Liu extends his hand respectfully, dead serious. Jinwoo takes note that he expected an angry brute, but this man might actually be chill beneath the grumpy aesthetic. back. As Liu turns to leave, Adam translates another message. Liu hopes that suspect S isn't truly kin to Jinwoo. Adam clarifies Liu meant no offense. Jinwoo just nods, accepts it, and moves along. Then director David Brennan swoops in, trying to talk, and suddenly Jinwoo finds himself seated across from Ms. Sellner. She greets him calmly, saying it's been a long time. Jinwoo wonders why the upgrader has reappeared in his life. He tells her he never expected to meet again, and she explains she's been trapped in recurring nightmares. She describes how her dreams lately show the strongest hunters being hunted down and killed, and those visions continue becoming reality. Jinwoo asks if she's referring to Christopher Reed, and David confirms it. They warned Reed beforehand, but he ignored them and was erased. Sellner explains the hunter executions aren't stopping. They're escalating. Jinwoo asks if she's here to warn him next, but she says no. Instead, she wants to ask him to protect the remaining hunters. She attempted to use her dreaming ability to identify which hunters were in danger, but the instant she tapped into that power, she was forcefully kicked out of the dream. Right before waking, she heard a voice. When Jinwoo asks what the voice said, she reports it commanded her to return and prepare for war. That phrase instantly triggers Jinwoo's memory of what the Giant King said about the looming war between rulers and monarchs. He begins wondering who is slaughtering hunters. He asks what this has to do with her request. She tells him the power hunting those hunters feels disturbingly similar to what she once sensed inside Jinwoo. He realizes she must have glimpsed the Shadow Monarch's overwhelming force during their previous encounter. David steps back into the conversation, saying they aren't asking just anyone for assistance, because this threat is beyond what human hunters can contend with. They need someone stronger. David admits they initially doubted Jinwoo, but after he folded Thomas Andre like a laundry shirt fresh out of the dryer, doubts evaporated. David promises the Bureau will grant Jinwoo anything he requests, even Koresh/Kamesh's runestone, because those blessed with power are the only barrier keeping humanity standing. If they fall, civilization collapses. But Jinwoo looks them dead in the eyes and refuses. He says he can't accept their request. Director Brennan, stunned, asks if this is because Jinwoo still holds a grudge against Thomas Andre. Jinwoo shoots that assumption down instantly, saying no. He just doesn't yet know who deserves his wrath. Basically, he hasn't decided who's first on his catch these hands list. He rises, all set to make a graceful exit, while Adam White is internally facepalming over the "family first, I'll kill every hunter on earth if needed" speech my glorious king just dropped. But just as Adam's about to breathe a sigh of relief, thinking the meeting is over, the king spins back like a plot twist in a soap opera. "I want the list," he says, deadpan. "Every hunter who needs protection, I want to meet them." Adam's expression softens like someone just offered him free chocolate. Damn, maybe this Shadow Monarch isn't only a walking war crime after all. He shuffles the papers over, like they're sacred scrolls. Cut to the final night of the International Guild Conference, aka Night of the Hunters. Drippywoo strolls in with Jinho, who's walking around like a guy who just survived getting snapped in half last week. Totally casual. "Feeling okay?" Drippywoo asks. Jinho, fresh as a mint in a toothpaste commercial, replies, "Better than ever." Meanwhile, the crowd whispers nervously like frightened alley cats because they can't even detect his presence. Apparently, he's operating on some cosmic untouchable tier. Someone points at Jinho and says, "That guy? He fought Thomas Andre to save him." "Yep, that's the Vice Chairman of the Year over there. Fully upgraded to Assistant Shadow CFO." As if on cue, a corporate suit slides over, waving a contract like it's the Holy Grail, pitching to buy all the giant corpses from Japan. Drippywoo doesn't even blink. "I slap monsters. Money?" Jinho handles that. Jinho, proud dad vibes, fully engaged, struts off, thinking, "Yeah, that's my boy, doing the VP thing right." White reappears, clutching the hunter list like it's the Ark of the Covenant, saying the rankings reflect both performance and contribution. Drippywoo peeks at it and casually asks where he stands. White hesitates, then says, "Given how many Titans you've bodied, probably third or fourth." Drippywoo wrinkles his nose. "Rankings? Pfft, too much admin." He decides the smarter, cleaner approach. Slap a shadow soldier on each hunter. Instant tracking system. Who's worth saving, who's about to flip, and who's about to get clapped next. Bonus, they double his phone lines to the rulers. While plotting this, Hunter Woo whispers a warning. Drippy Woo senses something off. Thomas Andre has arrived. One busted arm, still looking like a walking refrigerator in a suit. Thomas admits, grudgingly, that their fight left permanent damage. Even magic couldn't fix it. He also confesses Drippy Woo could have annihilated his entire guild, but didn't. Why? He asks. Drippy Woo shrugs. "You didn't do anything worth dying for." Thomas, still bruised ego intact, says Huang will get a proper funeral, even if he earned the fade he just took. Then he gestures, raising a hand like he's about to order room service. Once he's healed, he wants a meal, and for Drippy to pass his number to the manager. Laura slides in, face doing the whole try not to roll my eyes routine. "My boss is socially awkward. Roughness is his weird form of affection," she explains. "So anything you want is thanks?" Drippy Woo mulls 2 seconds. "Maybe a dagger. Something that doesn't snap the first time I swing it." Laura departs. White offers to escort him to meet the hunters on the list, Drippy Woo waves him off. Got it. But then, wait, something's off. His eyes narrow. Where's rank 6? White frowns. Lost contact a few days ago. Brazilian government still looking. Jinwoo stays quiet, but the gears in his head are grinding. 7 hunters left, one more wild card to plan for. Mr. Aura Farmer, standing nearby with White, asks Adam about rank 6's absence. Adam has nothing. Vanished before the conference. Even the secret agency in Brazil have no leads. 7 names left. 7 bullets in his mental target practice. Meanwhile, in Korea, Chairman Go Gun-Hee is in his office, clutching his chest like someone just spoiled the finale of your favorite drama ever. His heart's been temperamental for years, but lately the spasms are worse. Doctors say he has 6 months left unless he stops working. Already 2 years past that. Man was built different. He smiles, smug, thinking he's successfully cheated death longer than expected. Phone buzzes, wife calling. Apparently she can sense death through the line, because, of course. He says he's fine and hangs up. 2 seconds apiece. Then, bam, the room goes icy. Creepy grandpa appears, like a jump scare in a horror movie. Gun-Hee freezes. Not only did the man materialize from nowhere, but he also evaded all detection. Survival probability, 0. Before he can blink, a shard of ice punches into his gut. Yep, definitely not a dream. The chairman coughed up blood and fury, and demanded to know exactly who the hell this frosty intruder was. The old man just smirked with that "I'm too cool for name tags" arrogance, and implied that the chairman should recognize him. Then, without warning, he switched to full villain PowerPoint mode. Mana flooded the room, and he ordered the greatest fragment of brilliant light to reveal itself, like he was summoning a final boss cutscene. He insulted the human body, calling it a defective vessel, and then slapped the chairman again purely for entertainment value. But once the ice dust settled, surprise, the real Gun-Hee stepped out from the collapsing ice, glowing like a freshly awakened raid boss. His eyes lit up, aura crackling, every inch screaming, "I'm not done yet, you crusty refrigerator." The frozen geezer grinned, but deep down, he knew he just poked a lion with a toothpick. The chairman called him out. Frost Grandpa launched Monologue Part 2, rambling about 7 fragments, the 2 that were missing, and how he couldn't wait to grind their pride into fine powder. Now he was ready to finish the job. The chairman answered calmly. "Go ahead." The ice relic laughed, saying it was idiotic to fight inside a body he barely had control of, while the invader had full control over his body. Then the old man spread his arms and turned the room into Elsa's worst nightmare. Ice everywhere, freezing the world around them solid. But Gun-Hee wasn't here for this Disney reboot. He headbutted the frozen ground like it owed him rent, then launched himself straight toward the boa-wearing icicle. The intruder dodged and nearly kebabbed the chairman's head with a spike of ice. The chairman swung back, but the frost freak froze his arm mid-attack, blocking the punch. So the chairman just shattered the ice with brute strength and charged right again. Because why not? But his own body was burning out. He felt his heart screaming and his muscles tearing. He didn't have long. Whatever he planned to do, it had to be now. So he channeled everything, every drop of power, into one final blow. The frosty bastard erected a shield of ice, blocking the impact. But Gun-Hee's force was insane anyway. The impact launched the intruder like a cannonball across the room. That last attack took nearly all he had left. Gun-Hee collapsed to one knee, realizing he'd reached the end of the line. His body was done. The icicle man regained himself and sneered. He called the chairman's body worthless and mocked his fragment of luminosity title like a punchline. Before Gun-Hee could respond, the walking popsicle rushed forward and impaled him through the chest with an ice blade, savoring every second of being petty. He leaned in, calling him pathetic, declared humanity doomed, and ridiculed him for fighting alone without backup. But the chairman smiled. He said this fight wasn't pointless. The intruder paused, curious, asking what he meant. The chairman summoned a fireball and launched it toward the frost clown. The intruder simply sidestepped, mocking the weak attempt. But when the fireball exploded against the wall, it blasted a massive hole through it. It took a second, but realization hit the intruder like taxes. The fireball wasn't meant for him. It was meant to destroy the spatial seal trapping the room. The pocket dimension snapped open. Frost Grandpa tried to look calm, but the crack in his poker face gave him away. The chairman gave a signal. A shadow soldier emerged, one my glorious king had stationed on Gun-Hee as backup surveillance. The intruder glared, insulted that an ant dared appear before him. He mocked the idea that one shadow minion could change anything. But mid-monologue, he froze. Not because of ice, but because something was off. That soldier wasn't just unusual. It was terrifying. He bolted after the creature, slashing through air. The attack landed, and then the blade stopped. Someone had caught it with bare hands. My glorious king had arrived. He grabbed the intruder by the throat and demanded to know who the hell he was. And the icicle bastard instantly understood who stood before him. He sensed the Shadow Monarch's power flowing through Jinwoo. Startled by the sheer army of shadows surrounding him, Creepy Grandpa squinted at Jinwoo, the quiet observer, and asked with a tone dripping disbelief why someone with that many soldiers hadn't crashed his front door before. Then his gaze shifted to Drippy Woo, like he just spotted the missing piece in some cosmic jigsaw puzzle. Naturally, the first instinct of this frosty menace? Try to freeze Drippy Woo's arm. Bold move. The Shadow Monarch didn't even flinch. With a casual flick, my glorious king drew his dagger and sliced through the ice like it was a dollar store snow globe. Realizing the situation was rapidly slipping into nope territory, Creepy Grandpa did what any rational villain would do in his position. Backpedal hard. He offered a cheeky, maybe we call it a day, insisting that he wasn't here for a fight to the death today. Drippy Woo raised a brow. Sure, coming in like a season finale boss battle, and then suddenly asking for a polite tea break? Makes perfect sense. Creepy Grandpa then pointed toward the chairman, who was barely clinging to life. A sick realization hit my glorious king like a truck. The ant soldier had been assigned to protect the chairman, but apparently the villain already had a plan B. In a swift motion, he conjured an ice blade and hurled it straight at the chairman's chest. Drippy Woo tried to use ruler's authority to intercept, but the system smacked him with a resounding, nope, too strong. Panic flickered in Drippy Woo's eyes. He tossed a dagger to block the incoming projectile. But naturally, the blade had a mind of its own and swerved midair like it had personal grudges to settle. No problem. He just decided to step in personally and shield the chairman with his own body. But by the time he turned around, Creepy Grandpa had already activated a portal and was ghosting out like a villain with a fade-to-black budget. Drippy Woo wasn't about to let him slip without a souvenir. He activated Dagger Rush, unleashing every single blade in his arsenal, like a storm of pointy reminders. One dagger clipped Creepy Grandpa in the shoulder. Cue chaos. The old man completely lost his cool. He unleashed every demonic insult and esoteric curse he had stored in his brain, and announced, with all the pomp of a melodrama, that Drippy Woo was a mere vessel, and how dare he dare injure him. Then, with a flourish worthy of any cliffhanger, he promised he would return, leaving the dying chairman behind like a particularly cruel parting gift. As the portal slammed shut, my glorious king sprinted to the chairman, cursing himself for not sensing the attack earlier. The wounds were far too severe for normal healing, and panic crept in. He summoned Baru, pleading for the shadow to fix the injuries, but nothing worked. Desperation rising, he reached for holy water. But the chairman, ever calm, waved him off. Don't waste it, he said, his voice a faint echo of authority. The chairman knew his time had come, but there was no bitterness. He smiled, faint but genuine, telling Drippy Woo that he was glad he was the one facing the monarchs, that the world would one day need hunters like him to pick a side. He expressed that he had always dreamed of fighting alongside hunters like Drippy Woo, and that leaving the world in the hands of such warriors allowed him to go without regrets. Then came the kicker. He whispered, barely audible, that his heart had kept beating all this time for this very moment, to meet Jinwoo, to witness his strength firsthand. And with that final breath, the corners of his mouth lifted in a faint smile. He was relieved and entrusted the future to Jinwoo.